My husband left me for my own mother, and then came crawling back when he found out she didn't get the inheritance and I got everything. Right now, my life is a complete mess because of my unhinged mother and my not-so-bright fiancé, who teamed up out of pure greed and managed to destroy what little emotional stability I had left. I can't talk about this with friends. It's far too personal and humiliating. You'll understand why once you hear what I went through. I don't really have much of a family, so there's no one I can turn to. I'm here simply to get this off my chest and to make sure I'm not the monster they're trying to paint me as. Everything started 2 weeks ago, completely out of nowhere. My husband, we'd been together for 3 years, sat me down and told me he wanted to leave me because he had fallen in love with my mother. Let's call him Kevin. Yes, you read that right. No, it wasn't a joke. I was just as shocked as you probably are right now, only with an added layer of pure disgust. He calmly explained that he and my mother had been having an affair for 3 months. I hadn't noticed anything because I was drowning in work, and he'd been acting completely normal. No red flags, nothing suspicious. My mother is only 20 years older than me. I'm 27, she's 47. She had me while she was still in college. My father disappeared the moment she told him she was pregnant. Honestly, she didn't seem to mind. She wanted an excuse to drop out anyway. She told my grandmother that she wanted to be a single mother. My grandparents were wealthy enough to support her decision, even though they strongly disagreed with her quitting school. They tried to convince her to go back after I was born, but she refused. Over the years, my mother jumped from one career to another until settling on interior decorating. Not interior design. She doesn't design anything. She just tells rich people where to put furniture and how to decorate a room so it looks aesthetic. A luxury scam, basically. She has no formal education or qualifications, but my grandfather was a well-known real estate agent and fed her clients. She's unreliable, impulsive, and frankly useless. If she hadn't been born into money, she'd probably be homeless by now. My grandparents raised me. My mother never had time for me, and not because of work. She was too busy partying. As a child, I genuinely thought my grandparents were my real parents, and my mother was just an older sister. When I became a teenager, I stopped expecting anything from her. She never changed. My grandfather died when I was in 7th grade, and after that, it was just me and my grandmother against the world, including my mother, who was often the hardest part. If you've ever had to explain to your own mother at 15 years old why flying to Iceland with a man she met on Tinder 2 days ago is a bad idea, then you understand what my teenage years were like. She never cared how her actions affected others, not even her own family. My grandmother used to tell me that once she was gone, I'd be completely on my own. My mother would never be there for me. So I worked myself to the bone. I made something of myself. Today, I'm a chief operating officer at my company. I earn twice as much as Kevin does. He's a sales department head at a small firm, and I never once rubbed that in his face. I graduated from one of the best business schools in the state and interned at my current company thanks to my grandmother's connections. She taught me humility, something neither Kevin nor my mother ever learned. They both acted like celebrities without having accomplished anything. Kevin and I met 5 years ago at a mutual friend's birthday party and clicked instantly. We dated for 2 years, and when he proposed, I said yes without hesitation. At the time, he seemed like a good man. He used to joke about how hot my mom was. Not entirely inaccurate, I suppose. I'd never call her hot. She's unstable, and she's my mother. But objectively, for her age, she looks good. She spent a fortune scamming people with fake feng shui advice and then poured all that money into cosmetic procedures and Botox. I don't disrespect real interior designers or actual feng shui specialists, but my mother is a fraud, and on top of that, she's a terrible human being. I have every right to say that. Kevin used to joke that my mother looked more like my sister. I laughed it off because who in their right mind would think something like this could actually happen? I only stayed in contact with my mother because of my grandmother. She was the one who raised me and shaped me into who I am.
I will always be grateful to her, even if it meant tolerating her unstable daughter. My grandmother loved my mother despite everything. My mother, on the other hand, never loved me more than she loved herself. Even after my grandmother passed away almost a year ago, I tried to maintain some kind of relationship with her, out of duty more than love. That ended 2 weeks ago. When I came back from a business trip, Kevin sat me down at the kitchen table and with a completely serious expression told me he was in love with my mother and that they wanted to be together. At first I laughed, then I realized he wasn't joking. He went on to explain in detail how they'd been sleeping together behind my back for 3 months. It started after Kevin and I had a minor argument. My mother messaged him asking how to fix her headphones. That's how they started talking. Slowly, it turned into something more. According to him, they never planned for it to go this far. It just happened. I threw him out immediately. He didn't fight it. He knew where he could go. That night, I drank an entire bottle of wine and cried till morning. My eyes were swollen shut by 4:30 a.m. Drunk, furious, and completely broken, I did the one thing I probably shouldn't have done. I texted my mother.
In that message, I told her exactly what I thought. I said she had been a terrible daughter to my grandmother and an even worse mother to me, and that with age, she had only become worse. I told her she was nothing more than a scam artist, and that once her Botox and fillers wore off, Kevin would finally see the ugly witch she truly was and leave her too. I didn't expect her to respond at all, but she did, and her reply opened my eyes. She wrote that maybe one day she would lose her beauty, but she would never lose her bank account, which was about to grow tenfold thanks to my grandmother's will. I had completely forgotten about the inheritance while grieving my grandmother's death. Her lawyer had explained back then that the contents of the will wouldn't be disclosed until the full inheritance period had passed, around 6 to 9 months. By now, that time was almost over, so news was coming soon. My grandmother had explicitly instructed the lawyer not to reveal who would receive what until the deadline passed. The only thing we knew was where she wanted to be buried, nothing else. Neither my mother nor I knew what we would inherit, but given how wealthy my grandmother was, with money, assets, and property, my mother expected a very generous payout. I didn't. All I cared about was that my grandmother was gone and that I was truly alone. Money never mattered to me the way relationships did. Kevin, however, clearly cared about money. That was why he chose my mother over me. They both assumed her share of the inheritance would be larger than mine. They were absolutely convinced of it. My mother even bragged as if she already knew everything, as though the lawyer had told her in advance. I didn't respond to her message. I just tried to push it all out of my head. The next day, I contacted my lawyer and told him I wanted to file for divorce as soon as possible. Within a week of Kevin's confession, the papers were ready. All that was left was waiting for the divorce to be finalized so he could spend the rest of his life with his ex-wife's mother. Then something miraculous happened, and for that I will always be grateful to my grandmother, because even after her death, she still found a way to protect me. I had asked my grandmother's lawyer, who was also the executor of the will, to inform my mother and I separately. I couldn't bear the thought of sitting in the same room with her, especially not with Kevin. 5 days ago, the lawyer told me my mother had already been informed and that it was now my turn. I went in with zero expectations, but when I walked out of that office, I felt like the happiest person on the planet. Everything my grandmother owned, the money, the assets, the properties, was left to me. My mother received only a diamond ring and a matching pair of earrings that my grandmother used to wear. That was it. That was all she got. My grandmother left everything to me because she had taken care of my mother her entire life, and now, at nearly 50, my mother was old enough to take care of herself. Ironically, the woman who always warned me I'd be alone after her death made sure I would never be financially vulnerable, and the woman who depended on her mother her entire life was the one who ended up with nothing. That was karma in its purest, cruelest form. I had never felt happier. My mother found out about the inheritance an hour before I did. I didn't know what she would do next, but I was curious. I was certain that even if she didn't contact me, Kevin would. And I was right. The very next day, he messaged me saying he had made a huge mistake and wanted to come back if I would take him. He claimed that he and my mother were never compatible, and that after just a few days with her, he realized how good he had it with me. He said he finally understood everything and wanted to give our marriage a second chance. I laughed out loud when I read it. They clearly had no idea that I already knew the truth, that my mother received almost nothing and that there would be no massive inheritance. I thought about how to reply all day. In the end, I sent him a clown emoji and blocked him. I was almost certain he hadn't told my mother yet, so just to be sure, I took a screenshot of his message and sent it to her with 3 clown emojis. Then I turned off my phone. I didn't want to deal with the circus that was bound to follow. Instead, I put on Netflix and spent the evening in peace, refusing to let either Kevin or my mother ruin my night again. The next morning, I found out how it all ended. My mother's neighbor's daughter told me everything. My mother still lives in the house I grew up in. My grandfather left it to my grandmother and my mother, so she stayed there after my grandmother passed. I'm friends with the neighbor's daughter, and she said around 10 p.m., screaming started coming from my mother's house. No one went to check at first. Everyone knew my mother, and no one liked her. Then the screaming turned frantic. My mother had physically thrown Kevin out of the house. He was lying on the sidewalk while she hurled whatever she could grab at him, screaming the most vile things imaginable. At one point, she grabbed a heavy hardcover book and threw it at his head. It hit him square in the forehead. By the time neighbors came outside, Kevin was bleeding heavily, trying to stop it with his hand. The wound was serious. He needed 5 stitches. It was horrifying to hear. Kevin filed a police report against her. She ended up with a massive fine, but he was genuinely injured. The police went easy on her. She wasn't fully in control at the time. She has a great lawyer, and she's friends with the district attorney's wife. That helped. As soon as she got home, she blamed everything on me. She started sending me disgusting messages from a second phone number I hadn't blocked. I tried to ignore them, but I couldn't help wondering, was this my fault? What Kevin and my mother did to me is unforgivable, but part of me wonders if I should have just enjoyed what I had instead of inserting myself back into their lives out of spite. What I did came from anger and pain. I'm not proud of it. If I had known things would escalate this badly, I never would have sent her that screenshot. I just wanted them to hurt the way I did. I never imagined someone would actually get physically hurt. My mother had never attacked anyone before, at least not that I knew of. I couldn't have predicted this. I feel awful about how everything turned out, and her constant attempts to paint herself as the victim while turning me into the villain only makes things worse. Even Kevin now is posting vague quotes online about betrayal and suffering, which is ironic beyond words. But that's not the point.
Right now, it feels like they're trying to dump all the blame on me. I don't know. I genuinely feel bad that I interfered in my mother's relationship with my almost ex-husband, all because she bragged about stealing my husband thanks to an inheritance she never actually had. Update 1. I no longer feel guilty about what happened. In reality, I didn't do anything truly horrible. They destroyed my marriage, and I destroyed their relationship, an eye for an eye. It was my mother who lost control and attacked the man she claimed to love. I have no intention of feeling sorry for her. She's the unstable one here, not me. She will not make me feel like the villain, because everything that happened is entirely on her. Kevin did get hurt. Yes, I feel a bit sorry for him because violence is never acceptable. At the same time, this is the man who cheated on his wife with her own mother. That's disgusting. I genuinely don't understand how someone can do something like that and still believe they have the right to ask to come back. I feel bad that he was injured, but it's not my fault, not my responsibility. I've decided to block all of them everywhere I possibly can. I've also started seriously considering a restraining order against my mother. She's clearly unstable, and I don't know what she might do next. If she's angry enough to attack Kevin, there's nothing stopping her from turning that rage on me. I don't want that. At the same time, I refuse to abandon everything I've built over the years just because my mother is a dangerous person. A restraining order feels like the safest option. I hope it won't come to that, but I need to protect myself. Update 2. It turns out I really do need to file for a restraining order. I ignored my mother completely for almost 2 weeks and slowly started moving forward. Kevin accepted the divorce papers without contest. Things finally seemed to be stabilizing. With the help of therapy, I was preparing to let this entire nightmare go. Unfortunately, my mother had other plans. Yesterday, I came home after a long workday and found her standing right outside my front door. I told her to leave immediately or I would call the police from my car. She didn't move. Instead, she said she wasn't leaving until she spoke to me about the inheritance. I told her she could talk from a distance. I was genuinely curious what she wanted. She calmly said she deserved half of everything I inherited because it was only fair since my grandmother was her mother. I laughed in her face and told her she was the last person on earth who had the right to lecture anyone about fairness. I told her she wasn't getting a single thing and started dialing 911 just in case. She glared at me and walked back to her car. I rolled up my windows just in time. As soon as she reached my vehicle, she kicked the passenger side door as hard as she could, leaving a large dent. I stayed inside until I saw her drive far enough away. Then I got out and immediately took photos of the damage. Thankfully, I also have security camera footage clearly showing her face and exactly what she did. I downloaded and backed up the video to make sure nothing gets lost. I called my lawyer right away and told him everything. I officially decided to move forward with the restraining order. I tried to file a police report, but because she's friends with the district attorney's wife, the precinct chief told me his hands were tied. Fine. At least I have undeniable video evidence. The next few days will be hell. Court, paperwork, stress, but at least I'll finally be free from these people. Update 3. Hi everyone. The past few weeks have been overwhelming because of the divorce and all the legal proceedings. We're currently negotiating settlement and it's exhausting. However, last week I finally secured a restraining order against my mother. That alone feels like a massive relief. Kevin and his lawyer have been spinning lies, so I'm gathering every piece of evidence of his affair for our next court date. Hopefully that will put an end to all of this. I'm exhausted, but I'm seeing a therapist regularly to deal with the anger and make sure it doesn't consume my everyday life. If I've learned anything from this entire ordeal, it's that I never want to become like my mother. That's where this story ends.
Strange things in the mailbox. Nothing unusual had ever happened with my mailbox before. I live alone and rarely talk to my neighbors. At most, we just hold the door open for each other. About 2 months ago, in early May, I went to check my mail, something I usually do a couple of times a week. When I opened the box, there were a few flyers and a single black button inside. I was surprised to see it, but didn't think much of it. Figured it ended up there by accident. A week later, I checked again. This time, there was nothing inside except for a small piece of paper with some nonsense scribbled on it, called GL Wed Honest WGE. I had no idea what that could possibly mean. For a while, nothing else happened, and I almost forgot about it. But at the end of June, when I went to get my mail again, I found a few screws inside. That's when I decided someone must be messing with me, just tossing random junk they found on the street into my mailbox. A few days later, another piece of paper appeared. This time, it had my full name written on it. That was the last straw. I went to talk to the building manager, and he said he'd look into it, though honestly, he didn't sound like he cared at all. Yesterday, I found something else, a note with a to-do list. Buy sweet potatoes, feed her, check the mailbox, be quiet, be quiet, be quiet. That was it. I packed a few things and went to stay with my girlfriend for a while. I also sent an email to the building management, hoping to get some answers. Does anyone have any idea what this could mean? Has anyone ever dealt with something like this? It all feels too bizarre and time-consuming to be a simple prank. Edit.
I should have mentioned this earlier. The mailboxes can only be opened with a special key. They're all outside in a small shed. I don't know if someone could have picked the lock or slipped something through the slot. As of today, July 23rd, 2025, I've already contacted the police. When I came back from my girlfriend's place this morning, my apartment door was wide open, even though I'm absolutely sure I locked it. Inside, it was obvious someone had been there. My things, furniture, and papers on the desk looked disturbed, like someone had moved them and then tried to put everything back in place. I couldn't tell if anything was missing, but all my expensive stuff, my monitor, TV, and headphones were still there. I called the police immediately. 2 officers came to take a report. They advised me to stay with my girlfriend while they investigate and told the building manager about what happened. They said they'd probably call me tomorrow to go over everything again and try to figure out what's going on. I have no idea who could have broken into my apartment. I barely know anyone in this city and can't imagine who'd do something like that. But clearly someone has targeted me, and somehow they have access to both my mailbox and my apartment keys. I'm confident the building management will cooperate with the police and review the security footage. I'll update this post if I learn anything new. Thanks to everyone for your comments and attempts to help. Final update. Thank you all for the advice and support. With the help of the police, building management, and everyone who gave suggestions, we finally figured out what was going on. The management reviewed the security camera footage and identified the person who had been entering my apartment. It turned out that the previous tenant somehow kept an extra set of keys, both to the apartment and the mailbox. After management contacted the police, they tracked her down using the forwarding address she had left for her security deposit refund. She actually confessed to everything. It was indeed her who had been leaving the items in my mailbox. The police told me she suffers from serious mental health issues, and all those random notes and lists were the result of her illness. They also explained that she probably saw my name on the letters in the mailbox, which is how she learned who I was. The part that scared me the most was when the officer said she had entered my apartment several times, which means it's entirely possible she was there while I was asleep. That thought alone still gives me chills. I don't plan to post any more updates. I just want to move on and forget this whole thing as quickly as possible. Thank you to everyone who helped. I truly hope none of you ever have to go through something like this.
A woman treats her husband like trash, cheats on him, divorces him, and only 6 months later begins to regret everything. If I could give anyone advice about divorce, it would be this. Don't throw away your marriage over petty reasons. If your spouse is abusive, threatening you or your children, then yes, leave and never look back. But if not, think twice. In my case, there was no violence, no danger. We had been together for 8 years, and most of that time was genuinely good. We shared 4 children together. About 5 years into our marriage, I got a big promotion at work. That's when things started to shift. Suddenly, it felt like my husband was holding me back. I began to see him as an anchor, weighing down my potential for a better life. We had never been wealthy, and when my salary surpassed his, my resentment grew. I worked longer hours while his schedule became shorter. He spent more time at home with the kids, and instead of appreciating that, I despised him for it. I'd come home to dishes not washed, meals not cooked, or the kids already in bed, and I would explode. He promised to do better, but I never saw his efforts as enough. Over the years, the gap between us widened. The more he stayed home, the more I criticized him for not bringing in money. When he offered to take extra shifts, I snapped at him because it meant less help with the kids. No matter what he did, I always made him feel wrong. Deep down, I wanted him to hurt. And then, I met another man at work. At first, it was harmless, just chatting, laughing during breaks. Then it became texts, photos, videos, and eventually meeting alone.
I knew it was wrong, but it made me feel alive. My husband hadn't made me feel that way in years. One night, I came home to find he had cleaned the entire house, cooked dinner for the family, and even set up a movie night. A few years ago, that would have melted my heart. But that night, I couldn't even look at him. I pretended I was sick and went to bed. He doted on me all evening, bringing me food, checking my temperature. Instead of softening me, it made me furious. I was texting the other man before the night was over. After that, nothing he did was enough. I picked fights, pushed him to the breaking point, waited for him to snap. He never did. Instead, after every fight, he apologized, even when he had done nothing wrong. I, on the other hand, never apologized. I made sure he felt smaller, weaker, undeserving. When he eventually discovered my affair, I acted cold, like it didn't matter. Inside, it tore me apart, but I refused to show it. I saw his face break, saw him struggle not to cry, and in that moment, instead of compassion, I told him I wanted a divorce. It was like I could hear his heart ripping in half. He begged, pleaded, said we could work through it. But I didn't care. I ended things with the other man, not out of guilt, but because I knew I could always go back if I wanted to. Meanwhile, I kept tormenting my husband with constant criticism, never letting him breathe. I convinced myself I was right, that the whole internet was on my side, validating my anger. Eventually, I met with a lawyer. A couple of weeks later, I filed for divorce. The process was simple. He didn't fight me on money, on custody, on anything. The only thing he asked, the only thing was for me not to go through with it, to give our marriage another chance. And I still left. I didn't care at the time. He was broken, but I felt free. Free to do whatever I wanted, without guilt, without accountability. For a moment, it was intoxicating, that feeling of freedom, but it didn't last. Within the first month after he moved out, reality hit me hard. I forgot trash day 3 times in a row. Dirty dishes piled up in the sink, laundry sat untouched for so long, I started sniff testing clothes to see if they were wearable. And my kids, I had never seen them so unhappy. My oldest daughter had seen some of the messages I exchanged with the other man months before, and she knew her father still wanted to fix our marriage. She stopped talking to me, except to ask when she could visit her dad. The younger ones, too, said they'd rather live with him. I tried to buy their happiness, toys, games, little distractions, but their joy lasted minutes at best. They wanted their father. Work became another battlefield. Alone, I couldn't keep up with the extra hours that had once made me feel powerful. I caved and began calling my ex, asking him to watch the kids. Every single time he showed up, he'd clean the dishes, do the laundry, sometimes even cook dinner. When I came back, he rarely spoke to me. Just a quiet, "Call me if you need something." And then he'd leave, always looking so heartbreakingly sad. A couple of months later, friends pushed me to go on a date, dinner and a movie. I thought maybe it would be a new beginning. But halfway through dinner, guilt crashed down on me like a tidal wave. It was unbearable. I skipped the movie, went home, and cried for days. That's how I ended up on a therapist's couch. I poured everything out, from the promotion at work to the divorce papers. The therapist listened and then told me plainly, I wasn't right. The justifications I'd clung to, the support I found online, all of it. Lies I used to excuse myself. I kept going back, 2, sometimes 3 times a week. I argued, I tried to prove I had been right all along. But the more I spoke, the more the truth became undeniable. I was the one who destroyed us. My flaws, my cruelty, my pride, they outweighed everything. I had said and done things so vile, even I wouldn't want to live with me. Yet he had. He wanted to.
I'll never forget the day he begged me in front of the lawyer not to go through with the divorce. He was still fighting for us, even as I was signing our life away. And then I bragged about it online like it was some kind of victory. I was so wrong. Just a few weeks ago, after he had come by to help with the kids, I walked him out and asked if he'd ever consider coming back. He looked at me, tears filling his eyes, and said he didn't know if he could. The pain had been too long, too deep. He admitted that what hurt him most wasn't the cheating or even the divorce itself, but the way I sighed of relief the moment the papers were signed. He thought his love was enough before it was too late, but I didn't. And now, he doesn't know if he'll ever be able to trust me again. I can't blame him. Looking back, he was a wonderful husband, and I destroyed him. I robbed my children of the amazing father they had. I thought I was chasing happiness, freedom. Instead, I'm spending my freedom either alone at home or sobbing in therapy sessions. Please, if you're reading this, don't romanticize divorce just because the internet makes it sound liberating. Before you give up on your marriage, take a hard look at yourself. Ask if there's something you can change. That goes for both men and women. Divorce doesn't guarantee happiness. Freedom doesn't guarantee peace. And watching your husband and children suffer because of your choices, that's the deepest pain I've ever known.
I nearly lost $900,000 during my divorce, but instead, I destroyed my cheating wife in court with shocking evidence. I work as an elementary school teacher, so my daily routine is very predictable. I have fixed hours at school, and every Tuesday we usually had staff meetings that ended around 6 p.m. That meant I normally got home by 7. My wife, Terry, whom I had been married to for over 30 years, would go to the gym every Tuesday evening. She always came back exhausted, so I usually prepared dinner while she showered and handled the house chores. But one day, my principal surprised us by canceling the meeting. It was only 3:30 p.m., and I thought it would be a great idea to head home early, cook dinner, and maybe catch up on some household tasks. Lately, I'd noticed Terry becoming more distant, and I hoped a candlelit dinner might help rekindle some spark between us. Our marriage had been strained by financial troubles, and I could feel her pulling away more and more. She wanted to control everything, and if things didn't go her way, she would become stubborn and irritable. I always thought of myself as patient, but it was starting to wear me down. When I got home, I noticed her car in the garage. That was strange, because she usually took the bus to the gym. I slipped in quietly through the back door. The first thing I saw was her purse sitting on the kitchen counter. Terry was always meticulous about where she placed her things, so this was odd. Then I noticed her workout clothes and a large towel on the floor. Just as confusion set in, I heard noises coming from upstairs. My first thought was that she might not be feeling well, so I cautiously started up the stairs. That's when I stumbled over a pair of men's shoes. Scattered on the steps were pants, a shirt, socks, and worst of all, Terry's lingerie, the kind she only wore for anniversaries or special nights. My blood ran cold. I froze on the stairs, heart pounding, stomach turning. For a moment, I thought I might faint. I sat down, trembling. Then anger began to boil inside me, an emotion I rarely allowed to take control. Years of teaching had given me patience, but this was beyond anything I could manage. I moved quietly toward the bedroom. To reach it, you had to pass through the walk-in closet. The door was cracked open just enough for me to see inside. And there it was. My wife, my partner of 3 decades, the mother of our children, betraying me in our own bed. I pulled out my phone and hit record.
I knew I would need proof, not just for myself, but for the storm that was about to follow. Watching it unfold before my eyes was like living through a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. Terry, the woman who claimed to love me, who volunteered at charities, who acted like the perfect wife, was now just another liar. I couldn't watch anymore. I stopped recording, slipped out of the house, and just walked aimlessly. Eventually, I ended up in a park miles away. I sat on a bench, splashed some water on my face, and played the video back. The sound was low, so nearby kids wouldn't hear, but on that screen was the collapse of my marriage, my family, my entire life. And there in the park, I broke down and cried. By the time I got back home, it was around 7 p.m., my usual return time on meeting days. Terry greeted me at the back door with fake concern. "Do you want me to get you something to drink?" Her eyes were full of feigned worry, but I couldn't bring myself to tell her the truth. My voice shook as I muttered, "Not really. I think it's just my stomach. I'm going to take a shower and sleep it off." "All right, but take a bucket in case you throw up. I don't want to ruin the clean sheets," she said casually. That almost broke me. Those clean sheets had already been ruined, stained by betrayal. I replied more firmly, "I'll sleep in the guest room tonight." And that's exactly what I did. For the next few days, I pretended to be unwell. She went on with life as if nothing had happened, while I carried the weight of the recording in my pocket. The evidence that my marriage was nothing but ashes. When Monday came, I finally decided what to do next. I needed answers. Was this just a one-time betrayal, or had it been going on for a while? The next morning, I told the principal that I had to undergo an unexpected medical procedure and wouldn't be able to teach for a few days. A substitute was arranged, which gave me the freedom I needed. On Tuesday, I left home as usual, but parked several streets away, then walked back quietly, cutting through neighbors' yards. I knew all the back routes and moved carefully so no one would notice me. I slipped into our detached garage and changed into casual clothes and soft shoes to keep silent. Then came the waiting. I remembered that the last time I'd come home early, there hadn't been any strange cars parked outside. That meant her lover probably came on foot. I crouched behind the hedge and bushes near our front entrance, hidden but with a clear view of the door. Terry carried on her morning as if everything was normal. Washing dishes, starting the dishwasher, vacuuming, dusting. Around 11:30, she went upstairs. I heard the shower running, followed by the toilet flushing. After about 45 minutes, she came back down and left the front door slightly open, an unspoken invitation for her guest. It didn't take long. Around 12:30, he showed up. I didn't know who he was at first, but I managed to capture about 10 seconds of video on my phone. It showed his side profile and almost a clear shot of his face. He didn't hesitate, he just walked straight into my house. The first words I heard froze me in place. "I hope you're wearing that workout outfit again." "Of course," Terry replied with a giggle. "You always loved when I put it on. Sometimes I think that's what hooked you in the first place." That was all I needed. Their comfort with each other screamed of a long-term affair. They headed upstairs without a care in the world. I returned to the garage, my heart pounding out of my chest. My head was spinning with questions. Who was this man? How long had this been going on? And why hadn't she ever talked to me about anything? What terrified me more was the thought of my health. They hadn't used protection, at least not that I could see. The idea that she might have put me at risk made my stomach churn. I thought back to her years at the gym, the social circle of married women she had joined, and the charity events. Maybe the gym held the answers.
Update 1. Being a teacher came with one big advantage.
I had access to printers and other resources. I decided to start by printing still frames from the video I'd taken. Identifying him was now my top priority. On Thursday, when Terry was supposed to go to the gym again, I suggested going with her. I claimed I was thinking about getting a membership myself, especially since school was on break. She immediately grew uncomfortable and tried to talk me out of it. "It's really just a group of wives who chat more than work out," she insisted, but I didn't budge. So that Thursday, I walked into the gym with her. The moment I stepped inside, it felt like a scene from an old Western. Everyone turned to stare at me, whispering among themselves. Terry was visibly on edge, sneaking nervous glances toward the staff area. I tried to distract myself by walking around the facility. It was the usual setup, rows of machines, mirrors on the walls. Near the exit, I noticed a staff board with photos and contact info. At the top was the owner and director, Miss Elizabeth West, followed by 2 women and 1 man. My blood went cold. The man was him, the lover. Under his photo, Philip Barnes, head of training programs, personal coach. As I memorized his number, I looked back toward the machines. Terry was gone. Panic struck me until I spotted her a few minutes later in a hushed but desperate conversation with none other than Philip. She stood partly hidden behind weight equipment, gesturing for him to leave. Then she quickly returned to her machine as if nothing had happened. She didn't realize I'd seen it all. I sat there burning with rage, trying to keep my composure. When she came back over, she noticed my pale face and asked softly, "Are you okay? Is your blood sugar still low?" "I'm fine now. Are you ready to leave?" Before she could answer, the director's voice echoed through the loudspeaker. "Ladies and gentlemen, the last training session of the day is canceled. Mr. Barnes suddenly felt unwell and had to go home." A wave of disappointment swept through the women in the gym. But I wasn't disappointed. For me, it only confirmed everything. Update 2. It seemed that workouts with Mr. Bonte were a cornerstone for many women at that gym. That alone made me think this needed deeper investigation. When I glanced at Terry, she didn't show much reaction to the announcement of his sudden illness. But I could swear I saw her shoulders relax, as if a huge weight had been lifted. "Let's go," she said quickly, snatching her towel and gym bag from the storage area where everyone left their things during class. We were just stepping out when a woman approached us, someone I didn't immediately recognize. "Hello," she said nervously. "Sorry, I'm new to all this and lost track of time. My son Timothy's here, right?" That wasn't usual. New parents often struggled with pickup procedures. I reassured her I'd get Timothy while colleagues covered the remaining kids. I found him near his classroom, chatting with another student. "Hey Tim, your mom's here. Let's head to the pickup area." He looked puzzled. He was in the last year of elementary school, old enough to not lose track of time. "That's weird," he muttered. "Mom's usually busy with her fitness instructor on Friday afternoons. Back at my old school, she often didn't come until 5:30. The word fitness instructor hit me like a hammer. My heart pounded as I casually asked, "Oh, that's great she takes care of her health. Do you happen to know his name?" "Yeah, it's Bonte or something like that. He works at the local gym but also does private lessons at home. That's who I want to be when I grow up. Mom always seems so happy and relaxed after training with him. We usually order takeout on Fridays because she doesn't have time to cook." I nearly lost my composure. This man wasn't just entangled with my wife, he was messing around with multiple women in town. Back at the car, his mother thanked me warmly for helping. "Not a problem," I said smoothly, "part of the job. By the way, I don't think we've officially met. I'm Gerard D. Kids just call me Mr. D." "Nice to meet you," she replied, shaking my hand. "I'm Mary Jones. I remember seeing you at the gym last Thursday. You were there with your wife, Terry. Sorry she seemed in such a hurry to leave. It looked like Mr. Bonte's absence threw everything off." The moment she said his name, her entire demeanor shifted. She paled,
Her hands trembled, and she stammered, well, Mr. D, see you later, before practically fleeing the parking lot. That sealed it. Bonte wasn't just a trainer. He was a serial predator in our community.
Update 3. It was time to think about my future, and in that vision there was no Terry. Rage gave me clarity. I began reviewing all the small but crucial details of our shared life, the sort of things couples often overlook. Who pays which bills? Which insurance company do we use? When are utilities due? From which account do we make automatic payments? I discovered the mortgage had only a small balance left. My retirement account had grown to an impressive $900,000, thanks to mandatory contributions from our teachers' union. Our savings account, intended for an overseas vacation, held about $30,000. That trip was no longer on the table. My priority became draining it before Terry realized I knew about her betrayal. Quietly, I engineered a series of appliance breakdowns while she wasn't home. I'd unplug a cord, then claim a repairman had come to fix it, paying in cash. In reality, I pocketed the money and repaired it myself. Over time, I gathered nearly $20,000 this way. I also purchased tools and other necessities to prepare for what was coming. Update 4. I always paid cash for everything, showing the receipts to Terry, then secretly returning the items the next day. Dishonest? Absolutely. But honesty and trust had already been gutted from our marriage. Because of her actions, I was becoming a man I never thought I could be, a liar. Her Thursday daytime workouts with Bonte continued, and I no longer bothered even trying to initiate anything intimate with her. We coexisted like roommates. That was it. Quietly, I began boxing up my personal belongings, keeping them stored in the garage where Terry rarely went. Since her car usually sat outside, the garage was basically my territory, and she didn't notice my gradual disappearance. On the rare occasion she did ask about missing items, I told her they'd broken or that I didn't need them anymore. She accepted those answers mostly because many of my things didn't fit her preferred aesthetic anyway. When most of my possessions were gone and the house looked practically unchanged, I realized how much I'd already surrendered to Terry's control over the years. I withdrew what I could from my retirement account and bought a small house on the edge of town. It wasn't much, just 2 bedrooms, a tiny yard, and a garage, but it was mine. Close to the school where I worked, and best of all, the mortgage was small enough that half my salary easily covered the payments. No mansion, no luxury, but solid. Amazing what you can find if you're willing to skip the glossy neighborhoods. I moved my belongings in piece by piece. Furniture wasn't a problem. Secondhand shops and donation centers were full of cheap finds. Honestly, the place reflected my own state. Used, but still standing. It was time for everyone to get what they deserved. One afternoon at school pickup, Mary Jones came over to me again. Her son Timothy was playing nearby, but I immediately noticed she looked shaken, as if she had been crying. As a teacher, you get trained to read those signs. "Mr. D, can I talk to you for a minute?" she asked, her voice wavering. "Of course. Just park over there and meet me at the benches." I always joked that those benches near the pickup zone were my office. She parked, then joined me, while Timothy kicked a ball around. She hesitated, then finally began. "I don't know how much you know about what's been happening at the gym." I kept my face steady. "I know Terry, my wife, enjoys it there. Says it keeps her in shape." She bit her lip, clearly wrestling with herself, then blurted, "There are things you need to know." I cut to the chase. "Does this have to do with Philip Bonte?" Her expression hardened instantly. "You have no idea just how much it has to do with that pig." "I can imagine. But go on." Tears welled in her eyes. "He targets women at the gym. Regulars. He watches, waits, and then pounces." I asked how she knew. She looked away, ashamed. "Because I was one of them. Until last month."
We met every Friday at 12:30. Her voice faltered as though reliving it.
She confessed how she had believed there could be a future with him. Divorced, lonely, missing intimacy, Bhante had filled a void, until suddenly another woman replaced her. He dropped her cold, with nothing but a half-hearted, "Sorry, can't anymore." She gave a bitter laugh through tears. "I thought I was special. Turns out I was just another notch." I sat stunned. How could she unload this on me, her child's teacher? She must have been truly desperate. Trying to offer some comfort, I murmured, "Relationships aren't always what they seem." Her eyes narrowed, searching my face. Then she whispered, "You already know, don't you? About him and Terry?" I swallowed hard. "Yes, I know." Mary reached for my arm. "Then please believe me. He'll keep doing this until someone stops him. He doesn't care who he hurts as long as his ego's fed. He even brags about it at bars with his buddies." Her tone sharpened. "If you need my help to make him pay, just say the word. That man deserves to be brought down." She called for Timothy and drove off, leaving me in silence. I sat there, mind racing. Oddly, I felt a flicker of relief. Her confession made my plan for revenge seem less like an act of a betrayed husband and more like a moral obligation. Bhante wasn't just wrecking my life. He was a predator preying on countless women. The question now was, how many more? I started piecing together his schedule. The gym was open every day except Mondays, and he seemed to be there constantly. Using the number listed at the gym, I tracked down his address. Just 3 blocks from our house. No wonder it was so easy for him to sneak over for sessions with my wife. I told Terry that my doctor had recommended daily evening walks around 5 p.m. Luckily, she showed no interest in joining me. That gave me the perfect cover. Since I knew it wouldn't interfere with her own meetings, everything went smoothly. During my first evening walk, I headed straight to Bhante's address and discovered that he lived in a ground-floor apartment among several similar buildings. His car wasn't there, so I lingered nearby to catch his return. He usually left our house well before 6 p.m., which meant he almost always came back around that time. Sure enough, at exactly 6 p.m., he walked into his apartment. It became a routine, day after day, whenever I was free to go out. On days I had staff meetings and couldn't leave, I assumed he still followed the same pattern. I began to suspect that his evenings at the gym weren't really about exercise, but about meeting different women. To confirm this, I adjusted my schedule, starting my walks earlier and watching his daily movements more closely. Eventually, I decided to take a full week off from work just to investigate. I went to an electronics store and purchased surveillance equipment, a long-range listening device, motion-triggered HD cameras with audio, and an external hard drive for storage. On Monday, after setting everything up, I installed the first camera inside Bhante's apartment. Luckily, his place was small, almost like a studio with a kitchenette and dining space. One camera was enough to cover the entire living area, except the bedroom. Breaking in was shockingly easy. He hid his keys under the doormat. Careless. All I had to do was wait for him to head to the gym, slip inside, place the camera, and leave. From then on, every sound or movement in his apartment was recorded and streamed straight to my laptop, time-stamped and secure. That same evening, I got my first footage, Bhante eating takeout in front of the TV before heading to bed at 9 p.m. The next day, I slipped into the gym through the back entrance after closing time and set up a second camera in a private room where clients were usually assessed. This was the same room Bhante often used for one-on-one sessions. By Wednesday, when Terry went out shopping, I had already installed the third and fourth cameras, one in our bedroom and another in the living room. Reviewing Tuesday's recordings shocked me, though deep down I wasn't surprised. Bonte woke up, went out for breakfast, then came back and made a phone call. "Julie, hey, it's me. He's gone. See you at 12:30. Where what I told you. Don't worry, I'll be careful. No one will see me come over. You said he's out for 3 days? Perfect. I'll come Thursday and Friday, too. We'll talk later. Love you." He hung up with a spring in his step, practically glowing. On Thursday, I set up in the garage with my laptop, waiting. As expected, the camera caught him returning with breakfast again, then calling Terry. She answered. "Good thing my husband left for work. See you at 12:30, like always." That was the breaking point. Later, I asked Mary, Terry's mother, to help me compile a list of all the women Bonte had been involved with in the past. She attacked the task with energy, and within a week, I had names and addresses. To my horror, Terry's name was on that list too. At this point, our house meant nothing to me. It wasn't a home anymore, just a building. Terry noticed the emptiness, but I brushed it off by saying I was reorganizing my things. Meanwhile, I secretly prepared for the end. I met with a divorce attorney, set up new bank accounts and insurance under my name only, moved our vacation savings to my private account, and switched to a new SIM card. I even changed the beneficiaries of my retirement plan to our children. I gathered all the evidence, surveillance footage, phone transcripts, photographs. I placed it all in folders, along with the names and contact details of the women Bonte had been with. I even included the address of a local clinic for STD testing, since most of his affairs were unprotected. On our kitchen table, I left divorce papers, DVDs of their encounters, printed stills, and my wedding ring, cut in half and smeared with grime. Beside it was a note. "Terry, this ruined ring is what's left of our marriage. Do not contact me. If you must, do it through the attorney listed in the documents. I've requested a restraining order at the school, so do not come there. Any disturbance will result in immediate police intervention. Our children know the truth, so don't expect to rewrite the story." Then I left. In the weeks that followed, everything fell apart for them. Word of the scandal spread quickly. The gym owner was forced to shut down and leave town. Bonte was later found beaten in an alley downtown. Divorce filings surged in our area, and several houses went up for sale. Terry came home that day, found my farewell package, and fainted on the spot. A neighbor called an ambulance. She later tried to contact me, but I ignored every attempt. Eventually, she even stormed the school, which ended in her arrest. After that, her efforts stopped. Our children didn't hold back. They confronted her openly, disgusted by her betrayal. Thankfully, they had inherited stronger values from me, not her. The divorce went through, and financial matters were settled. Terry had to sell the house and move into a smaller place on the outskirts of town. By then, she was known around the community as the gym slut. Every time she went out, whispers and mocking glances followed. Shame and depression eventually pushed her into psychiatric care. As for me, I kept teaching, rebuilt my life, and now live peacefully in my new home.
My coworker's cultural food smells up the whole office. My coworker keeps bringing food from her national cuisine that stinks up the entire office. Now she's dragging me on social media, calling me intolerant toward her culture. I work with a Korean woman who was adopted as a baby by, honestly, the whitest people I've ever met. I'm Latino myself, also adopted by white parents, so we bonded over that at first. But she talks about her heritage like she grew up in Seoul, pretending she doesn't have American adoptive parents at all. I don't get it, but whatever, to each their own. Anyway, she constantly brings Korean food for lunch, and the smell is so strong, and not in a good way. It's the kind of odor that lingers in the air all day and seeps into your clothes. We work in a tiny space, and there's nowhere to move or hide. I have a sensitive stomach, and for months now I've been feeling sick just sitting there. It's not the spices or the seasoning, it genuinely smells rotten, like something spoiled. Yesterday was the last straw. I politely asked her if she could eat in the break room because the smell was making me nauseous. I must have apologized 10 times while saying it, trying to be as kind as possible. She went completely silent, threw her lunch in the trash, and I kept apologizing, probably 100 more times, but now the food was sitting in the garbage right next to my desk, reeking even worse. I eventually had to ask to leave work an hour early because I couldn't stand it anymore. As I was heading out, she snapped, "Don't pretend to be sick. I won't bring my culture to work anymore." I knew things would be awkward, but the next morning I woke up to see she'd posted a flood of angry updates about me online, calling me racist and claiming I told her not to bring non-American food because it offended me, which never happened. My manager told me we'd be having a colleague relations meeting today, obviously about us, and now I'm terrified I'll get fired for being culturally insensitive. I tried apologizing again and explaining that it must have been a misunderstanding, but she burst into tears, saying insulting her national food was the most offensive thing anyone had ever done to her, and that she now feels unsafe working with me. Then another coworker, the one I mentioned before, told me my comparison to someone bringing tuna sandwiches was inappropriate because tuna isn't tied to a culture. He even added that maybe my nausea was a subconscious form of racism. I honestly don't even know how to process this. I feel like I'm losing my mind. I never meant to offend anyone. I just couldn't stand the smell anymore. Comments and context. After everyone started calling me racist, I Googled if it's even possible to physically get sick psychologically from smells you associate with stress. Have you ever dealt with people who make you doubt your own sanity because they take everything so personally? We don't even have a proper HR department, just a general manager who already knows what's going on. The meeting's scheduled for 3 p.m., so we'll see how it turns out. She's clearly worked up, and I'm not sure the manager even wants to deal with this drama. For the record, it's not like she pretends her adoptive parents are Korean, but she constantly talks about her biological parents as if they were her real ones, and about Korea as if she grew up there. That's literally all she talks about. Her desk is covered with spiritual items she says came from her birth parents, though they're all clearly ordered online. Her adoptive parents have visited our office before. They're the sweetest, kindest people. But she treats them politely, like acquaintances, addressing them by first name. She's 26. She's never met her biological parents. She was adopted when she was about a year old and hasn't been to Korea since. Yet she acts like she's a first-generation immigrant, pretending the people who raised her don't even exist. I never said she couldn't eat what she wants. I just politely asked her to follow the same basic courtesy everyone else does. Don't bring strong-smelling food into a shared workspace. Why does that make me the bad guy? Just because I don't want to sit in a cloud of stench all day? It's a shared office, and we literally have a designated lunch area for this exact reason. I honestly don't understand what I did wrong. More details. Yesterday's food looked like fettuccine alfredo made with rice noodles, but it smelled like soured milk. And it's not even about fish. I go fishing myself and have no issue with normal seafood smells. I mentioned tuna as an example of a strong smell that isn't cultural. Her food doesn't smell like fish. It smells spoiled, like expired cream or curdled dairy. Most of her meals are creamy too, so I really think she's using ingredients that have gone bad. It's not just a strong aroma, it's a disgusting one. I'd say the same about anyone's food if it smelled like rot. As I said before, it's not about ethnicity or culture. It's about the fact that her cooking literally smells like something died. Growing up, my best friends were Vietnamese, and sure, their food had strong aromas, but never this. I don't care where a dish comes from. I actually love Korean barbecue and eat at a local family-owned Korean restaurant often. Yes, it smells strong, but it smells good. This is totally different.
Coworker reactions. Everyone else in the office heard our exchange. 3 other coworkers, who share our small workspace, told me afterward they completely agreed with me, and even thanked me for speaking up. My coworker's so-called traditional food makes the entire office smell awful. Now she's trashing me online, calling me intolerant towards her culture. So, I've got this Korean coworker who was adopted as a baby by the whitest couple you could imagine. I'm Latino and was also adopted by white parents, so at first we bonded over that. But she always talks about her Korean heritage as if she grew up in Seoul and pretends her adopted parents don't exist. I find it strange, but whatever. To each their own. Anyway, this coworker constantly brings food to work that smells so strong and so bad that the whole office stinks for the rest of the day. I've got a sensitive stomach, and it's honestly unbearable. We work in a tiny office, so I can't move away. The smell hits you in the face, and there's nowhere to escape. If it happened once a week, fine, I could live with that. But for months now, it's been every single day, and I'm getting nauseous just being near her. I need to clarify. It's not the spices or seasonings. Her food smells spoiled, like sour milk or rotten leftovers. Yesterday it was unbearable. I finally apologized and politely asked if she could eat in the break room instead, because the smell was making me sick. I would have said the same thing if someone brought tuna sandwiches. I must have apologized 10 times knowing she's sensitive about these things. She didn't say a word, just threw the food away. I apologized again, probably 100 times, but now her meal was sitting in the trash can right next to my desk, and the stench was horrible. I ended up leaving an hour early because I literally couldn't stand it. Before I left, she snapped, "Stop pretending to be sick. Don't worry, I won't bring my culture to work anymore." I expected it to be awkward, but the next morning I woke up to a dozen social media posts calling me a racist. She even wrote that I told her she couldn't bring non-American food because it offended me, which I never said. Now my boss has called a meeting about interpersonal issues at work. Obviously it's about us, and I'm terrified I'll be fired for being culturally insensitive. I tried apologizing again, explaining there might have been a misunderstanding, but she burst into tears and said insulting her national cuisine was the most offensive thing anyone had ever done to her, and now she doesn't feel safe working with me. Another coworker, Sam, told me my comparison to tuna sandwiches was insensitive because it wasn't cultural food, and maybe my nausea was some repressed form of racism. I honestly feel like I'm losing my mind. I didn't mean to offend anyone. After everyone started calling me racist, I Googled whether it's possible to feel physically ill just from anxiety. Has anyone ever made you question your own sanity like this, just because they twist everything around? We don't even have a proper HR department, just one manager, and he clearly already knows what's going on. The meeting's at 3 p.m., and I'm dreading it. She's so worked up right now that I wouldn't be surprised if the manager just gives in to her outrage to avoid drama. By the way, she constantly talks about her spiritual roots and Buddhist parents, though everything on her desk clearly came from online stores. Her adoptive parents have visited the office. They're the kindest people ever, and she just calls them by their first names like they're strangers. She's 26, was adopted at around a year old, and has never been to Korea, yet she acts like she's the child of Korean immigrants and ignores the parents who raised her. I never told her she couldn't bring food. I just asked politely to respect the same rules everyone else follows. We even have signs in the kitchen saying food should be stored and eaten only there. How does that make me the bad guy? I just don't want the place to smell like rotten milk. It's shared space, not her personal kitchen. And just to clarify, I love fettuccine Alfredo, but whatever she made smelled nothing like that. It reeked like spoiled dairy. The other 3 coworkers in our tiny office all agreed and thanked me later for saying something. The only one defending her is her best friend, both in and out of work,
And of course, he called me racist too. Everyone else is afraid of her because she takes offense at everything. People literally walk on eggshells around her. She's been lying online claiming I told her to go back to her country and insulted her family. I didn't even know what kind of food it was until she accused me of racism. But here's the kicker. During the meeting, my manager checked the security footage. We have cameras because we handle sensitive info. And guess what? There was nothing. Not a single thing I said or did could be considered racist. I was calm, polite, and respectful. Even crazier, the food wasn't Korean at all. It really was fettuccine alfredo, just as I suspected. Turns out she thought I assumed it was Korean because she's Korean, got offended over that, and built this whole story around it. So yeah, she basically gaslit everyone, including me. The manager was surprisingly chill about it, even laughed a bit afterward. He said she'd be put on a 2-week leave while they figure out how to fire her without risking a lawsuit. He's also having her delete all the social media posts, or the company's legal team will step in. He advised me to consult a lawyer or even file for a restraining order, given how far this nonsense has gone. In short, no, I'm not the bad guy here. The food wasn't cultural, it wasn't discrimination, it was just bad fettuccine alfredo.
My ex-wife cheated on me, then tried to become a copy of my new girlfriend after her lover cheated on her. My ex-wife, she's 48 and I'm 47, left me for a man who was actually married to her best friend from high school. Yeah, great friend. We've been married for 20 years, and I thought we had 2 kids together. Recently, I found out the younger one isn't biologically mine. She's his. My ex knew it from the start and kept it secret all these years. My name is still on the birth certificate, though, and I plan to fight for custody because that little girl is my daughter, not by blood, but by everything else that matters. Apparently, their affair had been going on for a long time. Finding out felt like being punched in the gut. When I asked her to choose him or me, she said him. Why? Because, in her words, he can go for a second round right after sex. That was it. That was her reason. She didn't care that I worked 2 jobs to pay for her college, that I gave up my dream of becoming a musician so she could stay home with the kids. Kids she was cheating on me around. She and the kids were my entire world, but she was never an easy woman to live with. She's bipolar, and life with her was a constant storm of anger and emotional abuse. I used to tell myself she couldn't control it, but later I learned from her own friends that sometimes she hit me simply because she felt like it. My kids saw it all, her screaming, her hitting me, and I just stood there, never fighting back. I hated that they had to witness that. Once, near the end, she snapped because I didn't take the trash out the moment I came home. She grabbed me by the throat and started choking me, right in front of our son. I managed to say, "He's never going to forget this." That's when she finally let go. Looking back, I should have left years earlier, but I stayed. For the kids. I thought I was protecting them. When the truth finally came out, she sat across from her best friend, the wife of the man she'd been sleeping with, and said, "Yes, it's true. No, I'm not sorry." Then she just got up and walked away. She moved out, took the kids, and moved in with him, in an apartment just down the street. Even then, I hoped she'd realize that the grass isn't greener. After all, this guy had cheated on his wife before, several times, and she knew that. I waited that entire first year thinking she'd come back. She even kept a spare key to our place, and I thought maybe she held on to it because she knew she'd return one day. But by the end of that year, things got ugly. Her new boyfriend would show up at the bus stop when I dropped off the kids for school, saying, "I came to say goodbye to my daughter, not yours, mine." I told him, "Then why were you fine letting her raise her for the past 5 years? Why did you let her take my last name? Why was I there for her birth while you were nowhere around?" He nearly hit me. That same night, they both came to my place drunk because he wanted to fight it out. My ex made it public, bragging all over Facebook about her new man. Our mutual friends saw it and immediately reached out to me and his wife. Of course, I took screenshots. She didn't seem to care that she was ruining her image before the divorce was even finalized. But honestly, why would she? By then, I had already confronted her with the paternity test results. For a while,
I was destroying myself mentally, wondering what I could have done differently. She accused me of not being there, but how could I be when I was working 2 jobs to just keep us afloat? I'd come home exhausted, the house a mess, walls covered in crayon drawings, blinds ripped down, and she'd still scream at me for not taking the trash out. 16 hours of work a day, and that was her biggest problem. Eventually, I started to believe maybe it really was my fault, that I somehow caused it all. It took time, and my brother, to pull me out of that mindset. He forced me to join his band, said it helped me get my life back. I resisted, but he insisted, and it changed everything. I met some amazing people, started playing again, and eventually began dating a woman. 45, kind, warm, the complete opposite of my ex. For the first time in decades, I was in a relationship where no one yelled at me or threw things at my head. But my ex still had keys to our old place. She'd occasionally stop by to drop off things for the kids. One day, she walked in and found my new girlfriend there. It didn't go well. That evening, she called, furious, demanding to know who the woman was and why she was in our house. I told her calmly, my personal life stopped being your business the day you left. That didn't sit well with her. Over the past few months, she's gone completely off the rails because of my new relationship. She tried to friend request my girlfriend on Facebook, demanding she accepted so she could see who was around her kids. When my girlfriend refused, she called screaming that I needed to make her accept. My girlfriend took the phone and said, I don't owe you access to my private life. If it's about the kids, we'll handle it through messages or calls. After that, things got weird. Suddenly, my girlfriend started getting random friend requests from people who were all friends with my ex. Then, my ex began showing up at my house on weekends while I was at work, basically spying. One time, I was on the phone with my girlfriend when she whispered, your ex just walked in. When she asked what my ex wanted, the woman said she was just checking how much milk was in the fridge for the kids. My girlfriend told her we had everything under control, and she left. When I got home, I demanded she return the keys since she no longer lived there. She gave me a fake apology, then stole our son's keys to make another copy. Once our lease ended, my girlfriend suggested we move in together, mostly to get away from my ex's insanity. My ex tried to sabotage even that. She called the cops, claiming I was taking her stuff. When the officers asked her to name a single thing that belonged to her, she couldn't. Now, the kids stay with us every other weekend. They've told me their mom doesn't let them talk about what we do together. She doesn't want to hear it. But lately, she's been prying again, asking questions about our time. Honestly, it's just jealousy. We live by the coast, and when the kids are with us, we take walks by the ocean, play games, go to the aquarium. If they come home with prizes, she throws them away. And lately, I've noticed something strange. Whenever she drops the kids off, she looks almost exactly like my girlfriend. Same haircut, same color, same style. It's honestly disturbing.
Everything we do with the kids, she tries to copy the following week. If we go to the beach, she takes them there too. If we visit the zoo, she's suddenly going to the zoo as well. She finds out what we had for dinner, cooks the same thing, and even makes the kids tell her whose food they liked better. Last week, my son told me he wanted to live with us. He said, Mom's lost her mind. You can bet I'll be using that in court. And just when I thought things couldn't get any crazier, she started sending me explicit photos out of nowhere. My girlfriend was sitting next to me when the pictures came through. I immediately told her I hadn't asked for them, that my ex and I never talked like that, and even offered to let her check my phone. She laughed, looked at the photos, and jokingly asked for my ex's number, saying she'd send some of her own just to show her how it's actually done. I called my ex right away and asked what the hell she was thinking. I told her my girlfriend saw everything and was furious. She claimed she'd sent them to the wrong person. Then my girlfriend chimed in, your name is the first alphabetically in his contacts, and your boyfriend's is at the very end. So who exactly were you trying to send them to? The ex hung up immediately.
Honestly, I have no idea what kind of game she's playing anymore. It's pure insanity. And just to clarify, my girlfriend didn't send her anything back. It was just a joke. She said she'd show her how it's done because those photos were laughably bad. Mirror selfies, no shirt, duck lips. My girlfriend just rolled her eyes at the lack of imagination. I don't live in the old apartment anymore. After I took back the keys, she used our son's to make herself a copy and kept breaking in. So I moved in with my girlfriend. The ex doesn't have access now. The kids don't have keys either for that exact reason. I'm currently fighting for custody. It's not easy since I'm not my daughter's biological father, but my name's on the birth certificate, which gives me legal rights. The ex has been prescribed medication, but I doubt she takes it. Whenever the kids come over, I check for bruises just to make sure no one's hurting them. Apparently, she even hit her boyfriend once, and he punched a hole in the wall, warning her that if she tried that again, he'd fight back. Comment: from what you've described, your ex sounds completely unstable, maybe even dangerous. You should talk to a lawyer and see about getting a restraining order. Update 1. Last weekend was my daughter's 6th birthday. It wasn't my scheduled time with the kids, but to my surprise, my ex asked if I wanted to have them for her birthday. Of course I said yes, and she even let me keep them for 2 extra days. I figured she and her boyfriend probably had plans and just wanted some kid-free time. But here's the weird part. This was the first time her boyfriend could have celebrated his own biological daughter's birthday, and instead, he just handed her off to me and my girlfriend. Tell me that's not messed up. Comment: he's a disgusting coward, the kind of man who got another man's wife pregnant. Don't expect him to act like a responsible adult. Keep a record of his neglect. It might help in court. Poor little girl stuck between terrible adults. Update 2. Looks like karma finally caught up to my ex. On Saturday night, I got a furious text from her saying I hope I was happy because I won. I know I shouldn't have replied, but I asked what she was even talking about. She sent a bunch of nonsense and then told me to go ahead and gloat, said I'd probably enjoy it even more since it's my fault something bad happened to her. I asked what exactly she meant, but instead of explaining, she went on a drunken rant about how all men are pigs and can't be trusted. That's when it hit me. She was drunk again, and her boyfriend had cheated on her. I didn't say a word. You can't reason with her when she's like that. I just read the messages, realizing she finally got what she deserved. She left me for my married friend, the same guy who'd already cheated on his wife multiple times. She was affair number 3. When I reminded her that the day she left, she said, "I know what I'm getting into." Well, turns out she didn't. She thought she'd be the one who'd change him. Guess not. When she ran out of insults for me, she turned her attention to my girlfriend, said I was ugly as hell and that I could have any woman, but chose a monster to replace her. My girlfriend is gorgeous, inside and out, and her ex clearly can't stand it. She's been obsessed, copying her looks, stalking her online, trying to provoke jealousy. Then she said something even more ridiculous. Claimed I didn't actually love my girlfriend because it's impossible to fall in love with the first woman you sleep with after losing me. We'd been separated for a year before I even met my girlfriend, and it took me a long time to trust again. That trust, she earned it. Then my ex accused me of being with my girlfriend only because I lost my old apartment and was mooching off of her for a place to stay. She said, "You're just pretending to love her because you're homeless." For the record, I had my own place, across the street from my ex. She intentionally rented nearby so I'd have to see her new boyfriend every day. When my lease ended, I moved in with my girlfriend and found work near her place. It was obvious she was trying to start a fight, but I didn't give her the satisfaction. And just when I thought her insults couldn't get dumber, she said, "I'm sorry I wasn't enough for you." God, I wanted to scream. You left me. Did she forget who walked out and replaced who? She dumped me for a married man who cheats constantly. What a prize. Then she went back to insulting my girlfriend, saying we both knew deep down I still wanted her and that my girlfriend couldn't compare. That's when I'd had enough.
I told her to contact me when she sobered up and turned off my phone. A few hours later, my girlfriend came home and asked what happened. I handed her my phone and said, "Read it for yourself." She read the whole thing, laughed, gave it back, and said, "Looks like he cheated on her." I nodded, and she was right. She told me my ex's narcissism explodes when she's drunk, and that she's just angry she can't come over and sleep with me out of revenge. Haven't heard from my ex since.
I guess, like always, the next day she reread all her messages, realized what she'd done, and felt like an idiot. Still, I'm sure she's back with him again. She just can't stand being alone. I'm so glad your new girlfriend just laughed it off. She sounds amazing. Definitely a huge upgrade from your ex. Yeah, my girlfriend's incredibly calm and grounded. It's strange, but refreshing. I got so used to my ex's constant explosions that this peaceful vibe still throws me off sometimes. You reap what you sow, man. Karma really knows when to show up. Just keep living your life. Looks like revenge really is a dish best served cold. Your ex sounds either completely toxic or straight up unhinged. Do you think that was a manic episode? I just hope the kids are safe. Can you get full custody? Yeah, I'm already fighting for custody. And I saved all those messages. Another reason why I didn't snap at her. My ex got cheated on by the very same guy she left me for. No surprise there. 3 days later, they were back together again. She literally has nowhere else to go. Now, she's stuck with him. Since then, apart from signing some divorce papers and the occasional text about the kids, I haven't heard a thing from her. And honestly, thank God for that. Still, I'm sure she's back with him again. She just can't stand being alone. This Halloween, my brother's band got invited to play at a friend's annual event. They've been performing there for years. It's sort of a tradition now. My ex used to come with me before everything blew up, but last year she skipped it. That was around the time I found out she'd been sleeping with her best friend's husband and that my 6-year-old daughter was actually his child. This year, no one invited her, but she showed up anyway with the same guy she cheated on me with. I was furious. The event is strictly 18 plus, and she knew that perfectly well. I'm convinced she brought the kids just to get me kicked out. Security told her she couldn't bring children inside, but she stood there making a scene. Eventually, security came to me and asked if I could escort them out, and she immediately started yelling that I care more about some stupid party than my own kids. My friend, the event organizer, came over and said she could stay for 2 songs. Then she'd have to leave or he'd call the cops. I told him not to give in to her drama, but he said he was only doing it for the kids' sake. The night turned into a disaster. I was on stage most of the time, so I couldn't see what was happening in the crowd, but I heard bits and pieces between sets. Turns out my ex tried to start something with my girlfriend, and it did not end well for her. My girlfriend shut her down instantly and told her to stop using the kids as weapons. A lot of people saw it happen. When I finally got off stage, multiple people came up to me to explain what had gone down. My ex was glaring at my girlfriend from across the room, full of rage. And then, my daughter finished it off. She yelled across the whole hall, "I have 2 dads, my dad and mommy's boyfriend, who's my real dad." The room went silent. My ex turned beet red, hissed, "Thanks for embarrassing me," and stormed out. But my son refused to leave with her. He clung to me, crying, begging to stay. Her boyfriend eventually walked up to my girlfriend and asked if the boy could stay with us. She agreed, and even arranged with my friend to let him hang around until the end of the event. Later, we took him home with us. That entire night was pure hell. I must have apologized 1,000 times to my friend, my girlfriend, even my son, for dragging them into that chaos. I kept messing up songs during the set because my eyes were constantly scanning the crowd, terrified that another fight would break out. I didn't even know she had left the venue without her son until after our performance was over. When I took him home the next evening, she made sure to avoid seeing me. Her boyfriend came out instead, said she knew I'd be there and didn't want to talk about what happened. Then he apologized for everything and started venting about how she behaves. I cut him off, told him I'm not interested in discussing her anymore. Later that night, my son called me saying they were fighting again, screaming so loud the walls were shaking. Apparently, her boyfriend had finally snapped. He told her she still wasn't over me and accused her of being obsessed with my life. According to my son, he yelled something like, "What pisses you off more, that he's moved on and you can't crawl back to him? Or that if you hadn't cheated with me, he probably would have left you for his current girlfriend anyway?" That's what started it all. I could hear them yelling in the background. I asked my son if I needed to come get him, but he said no. I stayed on the phone until things finally quieted down. So yeah, that's where things stand right now. The divorce is still not finalized, but I've moved on. I'm done mourning what I lost. I just want to get my kids out of that mess. And yes, I'm still fighting for custody. She's furious because she can't come back. If you ever hear them screaming like that again while you're on the phone with your son, call 911. Get those kids out immediately. Child Protective Services will at least remove them for the night, and one of those two will probably face domestic violence charges. She's getting exactly what she deserves. Cheaters are never truly happy. They live in the fog of their own lies, and when it becomes real life, all the ugliness surfaces. Your ex knows he cheated before and will likely do it again, but she's stuck with him now. She's drowning in the consequences of her own choices. Stay strong and keep making your girlfriend happy. She sounds amazing. He was married when she slept with my wife and at least 2 other women that I know of, and she knew about it. When I confronted her on the day she left, she said, "I know what I'm getting into." She really thought he'd change for her. Yeah, sure. And that's pretty much it. What do you all think? Do you believe cheaters are just lost causes, or can people actually change if the circumstances are right? Personally, I think there are 2 types. Those who cheat because they need the thrill, and those who cheat because they're miserable and stuck in the wrong situation. The first type will always cheat. The second might stop once they finally find someone who fulfills them. Which one's more common? Hard to say, but I'm pretty sure it's the first.
7 years after our breakup, my ex showed up at my door with a child, demanding child support. A moment later, my wife stepped outside, and that was when my life truly went off the rails. Cindy and I met in college. We were both 23 when we started dating, and we stayed together for 4 years. After graduation, we rented an apartment and lived there for about a year, until she suddenly left me without any explanation. Cindy was a year older than me and in her final year of college when we met. I was painfully shy, so she was the one who made the first move. She asked me out. She was the first to say, "I love you." 6 months into the relationship, she was also the one who suggested we move in together after college. She was an amazing girlfriend in many ways, kind, affectionate, deeply emotional, but there was one serious issue: her overwhelming insecurity. I'm not sure where it came from. Maybe it was because I rarely initiated things in the relationship, or maybe it was something deeper, but she was constantly jealous and suspicious. She hated it whenever I talked to other women, no matter who they were. After a few arguments, I stopped talking to all my female friends. Cindy mattered more to me than any friendship. I cut off not only friends from college, but also girls I'd known since high school, people I'd been close to for over 5 years. Today, I'm back in touch with them. Cindy is no longer part of my life, and my wife has no problem with me having friends of any gender. But back then, I was only allowed to spend time with guys, and even that was restricted. Cindy didn't allow boys' nights, convinced they were just excuses to go drinking, get drunk, and hook up with someone. It felt unfair. She forbade me from seeing anyone without her because of her insecurity, but at the time, I couldn't fully grasp how unhealthy this was. I was deeply in love with her and believed she loved me just as much. She constantly told me she couldn't live without me, that she saw no future without me, that I was everything to her. So I stayed. I wanted to marry her. That was all I wanted back then. Over time, though, the relationship became harder and harder to survive. She grew more suspicious, more controlling, more unstable. Once we were living together, I couldn't do anything without her hovering behind me. She checked my phone regularly, tracked my movements, and if I didn't tell her exactly where I was, she threatened not to let me back into the apartment.
By this point, it's probably clear how toxic things had become. What still amazes me is that despite everything, she was the one who ended things. The breakup happened over something incredibly small. One afternoon, my sister Lauren dropped by unannounced, something she occasionally did. Normally, she would message both of us beforehand so Cindy wouldn't get suspicious or think I had another woman over. But that day, Cindy wasn't home. She was visiting a friend. She was allowed to see her friends. I was not allowed to question it. Lauren and I talked for about 2 hours. Then her boss called and she had to rush back to work. Before leaving, she pulled out a lipstick to touch up her makeup, and in her hurry, she accidentally left it on the couch. I didn't even notice. Cindy came home minutes later, cheerful and relaxed, until she sat down on the couch. She jumped up instantly, holding the lipstick she had just sat on. I knew immediately that I was doomed. I told her the truth right away. I explained that Lauren had stopped by during her lunch break, that she used the lipstick before heading back to work, and that she must have forgotten it in her rush. Cindy didn't believe a word. She said Lauren usually texted both of us before visiting. This time she hadn't. Cindy also claimed it made no sense for Lauren to use lipstick at our place, since my sister rarely wore makeup. She was convinced I had brought another woman into our home. She completely lost control. She started screaming, swearing, throwing things, first pillows, then books, then she crossed a line. She grabbed the TV remote and threw it straight at me. I'd barely managed to dodge it. That was the moment I had to get out. I ran into the bedroom and locked the door. I didn't have my phone with me, so I couldn't call anyone for help. I sat alone in that room for nearly an hour while she screamed outside, accusing me of betraying her. She sounded unhinged. I was genuinely afraid. Eventually, the screaming stopped. I gathered the courage to step outside. The apartment was empty. The front door was open. I didn't text or call her for the next couple of hours, assuming she went out to cool off, but when she still hadn't returned by midnight, I tried calling her. The call wouldn't go through. After a few attempts, I realized she had blocked me. I tried messaging her, blocked there too. She had also removed me from all her social media. I panicked and tried contacting her friends, but none of them answered. I later realized I was likely blocked by them as well. For weeks, I tried everything to reach her. She ignored me completely. After nearly a month, I finally gave up. I understood she didn't want to be found. I was devastated. The months that followed were the darkest period of my life. I don't even know how I survived it. I went to work, came home, missed her endlessly, and pretended everything was fine. People told me I was better off without her. I didn't feel that way. I stayed in that apartment for a full year, hoping she might come back. I thought if I stayed, she would know where to find me. When I finally moved out, I buried the last hope of ever seeing her again. We never got closure. That unresolved ending remains one of the deepest pains I carry. I fell into a severe depression and avoided women entirely, afraid that moving on would make me a traitor to Cindy. That changed when I met my current wife, Emmy. She was a coworker, warm, kind, welcoming, not just to me, but to everyone in the office. She was beautiful, intelligent, and had an incredible personality. Despite all my efforts to keep my distance, I fell in love with her within a few months. I'd promised myself I'd never enter another relationship after Cindy, but Emmy changed everything. We've been together for almost 4 years now, married for 2. I'm genuinely happy with her. And until recently, I'd almost completely forgotten about Cindy, until the day she suddenly reappeared in my life.
7 years had passed since our breakup, or more accurately, since the moment she erased me from her life as if I had never mattered, all because of a ridiculous argument. Last weekend, my wife and I were simply relaxing at home when someone suddenly rang the doorbell. I went to answer it. Before I even had time to fully process who was standing there, she shoved a small boy into my arms. He looked about 7 years old. Cindy immediately demanded that I pay child support for the past 7 years. She didn't give me a chance to say a single word. She started screaming, claiming that for 7 years she had been trying to find me so her son could finally have a father. She accused me of running away from responsibility and insisted that I owed her years of unpaid support. I stood there in silence while she yelled. I didn't even know how to react. I was completely stunned. I just stood there like an idiot while she kept shouting. The accusations made no sense. I had waited an entire year after she vanished, hoping she would come back. She was the one who left me, not the other way around, and I was absolutely certain that the child wasn't mine. I stayed silent only because I was in shock. I couldn't even speak. When Emmy realized I had disappeared for a while, she came outside to see what was going on, and that was when everything flipped upside down. The moment Cindy saw my wife, all the color drained from her face. It was instantly clear that she was in serious trouble. At the time, I didn't yet understand why, but it was obvious that seeing Emmy completely rattled her. Emmy looked just as shocked to see Cindy standing at our door. Before I could say anything, the two of them started screaming at each other. I couldn't even follow what they were arguing about, but it was obvious they knew each other. This wasn't a first encounter. They went straight for each other, hurling insults, throwing the most vile words imaginable back and forth. Meanwhile, I stood there silently next to the boy, trying to understand what the hell was happening. Then Emmy finally brought out the heavy artillery. She told Cindy that if she didn't leave immediately, she was calling the police. That clearly wasn't an option Cindy wanted. She looked absolutely furious, but after one last round of insults and hateful looks thrown at both of us, she backed down. The moment Emmy repeated that she was calling the cops, Cindy grabbed her son and bolted as fast as she could. I had no idea what I had just witnessed. I assumed Emmy would explain everything once Cindy was gone. Instead, things somehow got even stranger. As soon as the door closed, Emmy turned to me and started yelling, asking how I could do this to her, how I could hide something like this from her. I still said nothing. I just stared at her in complete confusion. Her accusations made no sense to me. She acted as if I had deliberately hidden my past relationship with Cindy, but that wasn't true. I had always been open with Emmy. I told her everything about my ex. The only thing I hadn't done was show her pictures of Cindy. Not because I was hiding anything, there was simply nothing to show. I had lost my old phone before we moved into the new house. Every photo I had of Cindy was on that phone. When I lost it, I lost all of them. On top of that, I had already deleted most of our photos from social media because they were too painful to look at. Seeing reminders of how she disappeared without explanation hurt too much. So, first I deleted the photos, then I lost the phone, and that was it. No pictures left anywhere. I never tried to recover them. Honestly, I thought it was for the best. Fewer reminders. A few group photos still existed on my friends' accounts, but I asked them to remove those too. I didn't want to see myself with her. If Emmy had ever asked to see what Cindy looked like, I would have shown her whatever I could find. But she never asked, and digging through other people's albums for old photos felt pointless, especially since Emmy never showed any interest. So she never saw Cindy's face. After everything that happened, Emmy said she needed to go stay with her parents for a while, to cool off, sort through her feelings, and maybe come back later. I begged her to stay, but she left anyway. She said she couldn't be in the same space with me right now and needed time alone to process everything. I didn't even fully understand what she meant. She didn't explain. The whole situation felt like déjà vu, like history repeating itself, just like with Cindy. I was completely crushed. The next day, I finally forced myself to start making calls, trying to understand what was really going on. I called her parents first. They immediately attacked me, saying I should have told them about Cindy beforehand and not let everything explode like this. They tore into me and then hung up without giving me any real answers. Desperate, I called Emmy's older sister. She was the only person left who might explain something. I was lost, and she was my last hope. When she answered, I told her everything that had happened. That was when I finally learned the truth. Cindy and Emmy were cousins. Cindy's real name was Cynthia.
The names I'm using here aren't their real ones, and I never called her that myself, which is why Emmy never made the connection. Apparently, Cindy had always been cruel and had been tormenting Emmy since childhood. Their relationship had been strained for years, but everything completely collapsed on Emmy's 18th birthday. Cindy slept with Emmy's boyfriend, the one she had been dating for nearly 3 years. The entire family exploded. Emmy's mother, who was Cindy's mother's sister, caused a massive scandal over Cindy's behavior. Naturally, each side defended their own child, and the families completely cut contact after that. But it didn't end there. Cindy continued to harass Emmy by spreading disgusting rumors about her online. Things escalated so badly that the parents had to intervene again. Only then did Cindy finally leave Emmy alone, and only because her parents forced her to. The cousins never spoke again, until they met again because of me. After that conversation, everything finally made sense. I understood why Emmy lost control when she saw Cindy on our doorstep. Seeing her, or Cynthia, as Emmy knew her, dragged painful memories back to the surface for both of us. I spoke to Emmy after that call. Her sister had clearly spoken to her as well, because for the first time, Emmy finally answered my call. Until then, she had been rejecting every one. I told her I understood why she reacted the way she did, but I also told her the truth, that she never asked, never shown any interest in Cindy, and that I never meant to hide anything from her.
That made complete sense to me. All of that was in the past, and she was my future. If she had asked me even once about Cindy, I would have shown her a photo immediately, and all of this would have been resolved long ago. I tried to calmly explain my point of view, but for some reason she still believed I was at fault, that I should have talked more about my past relationship. According to her, if I had done that, she might have asked questions herself, and we would have discovered everything earlier. I honestly didn't understand what exactly I had done wrong, and I told her that. That only made things worse. She became even angrier and stopped talking to me, calling me stupid and self-absorbed before hanging up. She said she had gone through hell because of Cindy and expected me to understand that. I replied that I had gone through hell with her too, but I didn't see Emmy trying to understand me. That seemed to hit a nerve. She snapped, "Fine, you win the contest for having the worst ex," and ended the call. Since then, she hasn't answered my calls or messages. I feel like I completely screwed everything up. My wife doesn't lose her temper easily, so it was obvious this was a deeply painful and sensitive subject for her. But damn it, it was painful for me too. Putting all the blame on me alone felt unfair, especially when I genuinely didn't understand what I was supposed to have done differently. The only thing I was grateful for was that Cindy hadn't shown up again. If she kept inserting herself into my life, this mess would only get worse. Update 1. First of all, thank you to everyone who shared advice and thoughts. I truly appreciated every response. For those who asked whether my wife had ever mentioned being bullied in the past, no, she hadn't. She never talked about her childhood. I only learned about it after speaking with her sister. Even though I knew this wasn't technically my fault, I decided to take initiative and go to my wife's parents' house. I wanted to save our relationship. I understood that if I wanted to be with Emmy, I had to try to fix things, even if I wasn't the one who caused them. Because we're supposed to fight the problem together, not each other. Yesterday, after almost a week of silence, I finally went to see her. Both Emmy and her parents were surprised to see me at the door. I didn't wait for their reaction. The moment the door opened, I hugged her tightly. She froze for a second, then hugged me back. We stood there like that for several minutes without saying a word. The past week had been brutal for both of us, and we both realized that more than anything, we just wanted to be together. Who was right and who was wrong no longer mattered. As soon as I let go, she apologized and broke down crying. She admitted she had genuinely thought she'd lost me forever because of her outburst after Cindy's visit and the way she behaved afterwards. She admitted she acted irrationally and unfairly, apologizing over and over. Her parents and I comforted her while she cried. It meant a lot to see that she recognized she hadn't been fair to me. At the same time, I felt guilty for not coming to see her sooner, because that delay was what finally pushed her over the edge. After we talked everything through, she packed her things and came home with me. We're back together now. I can't say everything is completely back to normal, but we're working on it. We're slowly unpacking everything that happened over the past week, including Cindy's visit. And we still needed to figure out why she showed up in the first place. Update 2. We finally learned why Cindy came to our house. No surprises. She wanted money. She made that clear immediately by demanding child support for a child I had absolutely no connection to, emotionally or biologically. Emmy and her sister made several calls to figure out what was really going on, since the families hadn't spoken in years. They confirmed what I already knew. The child is not mine. Apparently, she had been seeing another man for years. I strongly suspect she was cheating on me during the final months of our relationship. I don't have proof, but everything lines up. She dumped me on the most ridiculous excuse and erased me from my life like I never existed. It makes perfect sense that she already had someone else lined up. Most likely, she was already pregnant when she left me and just needed a reason to disappear. The incident of my sister was the perfect excuse. Many of her relatives knew about the other man, but I was forbidden from communicating with her family unless Cindy herself was present, so I knew nothing and never would have if she hadn't made the massive mistake of showing up at my house trying to pressure me into giving me money. It turned out the man she was with left her a few months ago. She had quit her job when she got involved with him and had no savings after giving birth. When he disappeared, she was left with nothing. He did exactly what she had done to me, vanished without explanation. Now she's barely scraping by. Her parents refused to support her financially, saying they needed to save for retirement. If they supported her and the child, they wouldn't be able to retire at all. Harsh, maybe, but now her desperation made sense. After the incident at my house, none of Cindy's relatives have seen her. I'm sure someone will eventually track her down or report her, because rumors say she's already scammed a few people out of money. They're just rumors for now, but after what she tried to pull with me, I wouldn't be surprised if they were true. Update 3. We decided to start couples therapy, along with individual sessions. It turns out we hadn't dealt with our past as well as we thought. Cindy's mere appearance was enough to throw our lives into chaos. We couldn't allow that to happen again. As for Cindy, according to some relatives, she's now living with a new man she met online just days ago. He's already madly in love with her and invited her to move in. Her parents are devastated, not just by her behavior, but by the fact that she told them they're no longer allowed to see their grandchild. I'm not taking her side, but honestly, what did they expect? They turned away when she needed them most, and now they're shocked things aren't fine. They've always enabled her behavior, towards me and towards Emmy. Her parents were never particularly pleasant people, and she's no different. The apple didn't fall far from the tree. What truly breaks my heart is that a child is the one paying the price for all her terrible decisions. That's where this story ends.
My girlfriend overheard my family talking badly about her. I'm 35 years old. My girlfriend Sammy is 30, and we've been together for a little over a year. She is wonderful, smart, attractive, driven, educated, kind, and a little quirky. She has everything I've ever wanted in a partner. Until last week, I truly believed my family felt the same way about her. Last week, I went to my parents' house for our usual family dinner. We get together several times a month. It's a long-standing tradition. Normally, Sammy joins us, but that evening she had work obligations, so I told my family she wouldn't be coming. Halfway through dinner, I got up to use the bathroom when I received a text from Sammy saying she was outside. She had finished work early and decided to stop by just to spend some time with me. Normally, she would have walked straight in, which is completely fine, but this time she needed help carrying some gifts. The next day, Sammy was leaving for a work trip and then heading on vacation with friends, so she wouldn't be back until Thanksgiving. My brother and sister, they're twins, had birthdays coming up the following week, and Sammy had prepared gifts for them. At that moment, my family didn't know she was there. We walked into the house and headed toward the kitchen, and that's when we overheard them. My sister was saying how relieved she was that Sammy hadn't come because my annoying girlfriend always ruined family dinners just by being there. My brother and my other sister agreed, calling her irritating and unpleasant. My father said they should at least be polite to her. Then my mother joined in. She said that Sammy was nice enough, but she couldn't understand how I could be attracted to someone so fat, and that I could easily find someone much better. Everyone, even my father, agreed with her. Then my sister added that I was dating below my level because I still hadn't fully recovered from my breakup with my ex 5 years ago. I was completely stunned. My family had always been kind to Sammy. I had never once heard them say anything cruel about her, or about anyone, really. Sammy walked into the kitchen, silently set the gifts down on the counter, and through tears muttered something like, "Happy birthday." Then she ran out the door. My family looked shocked and deeply uncomfortable. I asked them what the hell was wrong with them and didn't wait for an answer. I ran after Sammy. She was sitting in her car, crying. Sammy is usually very strong, but family means everything to her. She has no real family of her own, only an alcoholic father she no longer has contact with. My family had become her family. It was the family she had always dreamed of having. She was genuinely happy when they welcomed her and started inviting her to family events. The gifts she brought my siblings were paintings she had spent hours working on. Yes, she's overweight, but to me, she's beautiful, exactly as she is. And since we started dating, she's lost around 18 kilograms. I would love her at any weight, and I'm proud of the work she's done. I don't understand how they could call her annoying. She only comes when she's invited. She usually brings baked goods or beer. She's taken my family out to dinner many times and paid for everyone. She's incredibly generous. She even became my sister's regular babysitter for her 2 kids. She helped my brother get a job at her company, personally vouching for him and risking her professional reputation. She never asked for anything in return and never threw it in anyone's face. She even washes dishes when we visit for dinner. What makes this even worse is that I was planning to propose to her in the next few months. I was going to ask my sisters to help me pick out a ring. Now Sammy barely talks about what happened. She doesn't really discuss it with me. She's always wanted a family, and she can't understand why my family doesn't like her or what she did wrong. She told me she would talk when she got back from vacation. I don't want to lose her over this. I would choose her over my family without hesitation. Since the incident, she hasn't been her usual cheerful self. I've caught her crying more than once. I try to comfort her, but she keeps pretending she's fine. At this point, I don't even know if I want my family in my life. They've all reached out with weak apologies, full of excuses. When I asked my mother whether she had apologized directly to Sammy, she said I could just pass the apology along. They all claim to feel ashamed, but none of them can explain exactly why Sammy was annoying or how she supposedly ruined family gatherings. The only reasonable person has been my father. He offered to apologize to Sammy in person.
Update 1. I told Sammy clearly that she's my priority, not my family, and that I would do whatever it takes to make her feel safe and comfortable. I was terrified she might leave me because of this, but I think she knows I'm fully on her side. What makes this situation especially painful is her past. Her family history is tragic, and she never deserved any of it. Her mother died when she was young. Instead of coping with his grief, her father turned to alcohol. She has always said that the day her mother died was the day she became an orphan. Within 18 months, she also lost her grandmother, grandfather, and aunt, the only good relatives she had left. She's been living independently since she was 15. I had a conversation with my sister that ended with me telling her to go to hell. She couldn't give a single concrete reason for what bothered her about Sammy.
Her only excuse was that she never thought Sammy or I would overhear them. When I met Sammy, she wasn't alone. She built her own family from friends. She surrounds herself with people who love her and whom she loves back. She doesn't allow toxic people into her life. Maybe she idealized my family because from the outside, we really did look like the perfect, wholesome family. I believed that too. I decided to take Sammy away for Thanksgiving. I was on the phone with a very kind hotel employee trying to find a room that wasn't already booked. No matter what, I think this will become our new tradition. Quiet weekends together, while everyone else runs around preparing for the holiday. I also spoke briefly with my father. He's still in shock over everything and agreed to apologize to Sammy in person when she's ready to hear it. Sammy knows I choose her over my family and that I would choose her over anyone. Sammy and I had a wonderful Thanksgiving. We spent it in a small mountain resort town. It was a great weekend, and we talked a lot about what to do regarding my family. She was still deeply hurt, but she insisted that I shouldn't completely cut my family out of my life. I told her it would depend entirely on their behavior. My mother refused to believe that I wouldn't come to their Thanksgiving dinner.
Update 2. After my previous post, I told my mother that Sammy and I would not be coming for Thanksgiving. She brushed it off until the day before the holiday when she called to make sure I was bringing a pie. I reminded her that I wouldn't be there, and she burst into tears. She said she was sorry for hurting Sammy and wanted a chance to apologize. I made it clear that such a chance would come after Thanksgiving. When we returned from our trip, my parents came over for dinner. I discussed it with Sammy beforehand. She felt my parents deserved a chance to make things right, and honestly, I think she really wanted things to improve with my family. The dinner was awkward, to say the least. My father started with a sincere apology to Sammy. He said he was deeply ashamed and genuinely wanted to make amends. They had a good, honest conversation. Talking with my mother was more complicated. She cried most of the time and kept emphasizing how sorry she was. I couldn't tell whether she was truly remorseful or just upset that I had taken Sammy's side. I don't think Sammy was sure either. A few days later, my mother called Sammy and invited her to lunch to talk privately. Many people had suggested that my family likely found Sammy annoying because of their own insecurities or because they were projecting their issues onto her. That turned out to be spot on. Sammy went to lunch with my mom, and they had a long, meaningful conversation. Sammy said my mom admitted she felt jealous of how educated Sammy was and the opportunities she had. Sammy, in turn, admitted she envied my mom for having a large, close-knit family. She shared her own background and how she had been living independently since her teenage years. I think that really affected my mom, who had always been surrounded by a loving family. I believe she was genuinely horrified by her own behavior towards someone who only wanted to belong. Overall, it feels like the relationship between my parents and Sammy has improved. My younger sister reached out to Sammy after Thanksgiving. I don't think any of my siblings expected me to skip the family dinner, and I heard they were pretty angry about me going on vacation instead. My sister apologized over the phone. I don't know if it was enough, but it was a step. Sammy feels neutral toward her. She said it seemed like my sister was more sorry about getting caught, but she still appreciated the apology. My brother, whom Sammy helped get a job, had a few very uncomfortable weeks at work while Sammy was away. By Thanksgiving, he was probably convinced she wouldn't sabotage his career. When Sammy returned, he came to her office to apologize. Again, it felt more like damage control than true remorse, but he did apologize in person and didn't dodge responsibility. Sammy remains neutral toward him as well. The only one still refusing to budge is my other sister, my brother's twin. She hasn't apologized and seems angry that she no longer has a free babysitter. She insists she has nothing to apologize for and claims Sammy is the one causing problems. This has created a noticeable rift in the family. My parents want Sammy and me to come for Christmas dinner,
but I'm not comfortable being around my sister right now, and I won't put Sammy through that stress. My parents even suggested that my sister stay home so we would come. I appreciate the intention, but it would feel wrong knowing she'd be alone on Christmas while her kids are with their father. Sammy has plenty of invitations from friends, while my sister likely wouldn't have many options at the last minute. Sammy told my parents she doesn't want to deepen the family divide and that we'll visit another time. She admitted to me while she has forgiven my family, she's still not comfortable spending time with them yet. That's completely fine with me. I think some distance will be healthy. We're still deciding where to spend Christmas, but we'll probably go visit my best friend. And now for the best part of the update. My best friend's wife went with me to look at engagement rings. She dragged me through all the chain stores, scoffed at identical rings with wildly different prices, and eventually took me to a local jeweler. We discussed a custom design, and the jeweler immediately understood what I wanted. She said she could start in January. A few nights ago, she sent me a photo of the stone she found to see if it matched my vision. Sammy saw the message, and it turned into a spontaneous proposal. She said yes. So now I have a fiancé. We haven't told many people yet. I'll tell my family later. For now, I'm just enjoying this time with her. Overall, we're doing well, better than I expected after everything that happened. I'm sad about my sister because I miss her and her kids, and I do miss my family, but I'm at peace with my choices. I think most relationships will heal with time, except maybe with that one sister. Sammy liked the idea of a destination wedding next summer, but we haven't planned anything yet. After everything with my family, she told me she now knows for sure that I will always be on her side and that I have truly become her family.
I'm 33 years old, and I haven't spoken to my parents for 3 years. The reason is my younger brother, who is now 30. A few years ago, he convinced our parents that investing in my business was a terrible idea. At the very last moment, he pushed them to back out, leaving me without investors after I had already quit my job. I'll be honest, I hate my brother, and not only because of that incident. I've hated him ever since I realized that my parents would always love him more than me. He was the classic golden child. My parents are immigrants, and in our culture, men are treated almost like royalty. We were never treated as equals. They didn't even pretend otherwise. It was always painfully clear that he would come first in everything. My parents are extremely traditional and believe that a woman's only responsibilities are housework, marriage, and children. That's it. I always knew they wanted their firstborn to be a son, but they got me instead. They weren't openly cruel, but it was obvious their affection was always directed toward my brother. Things might have been slightly easier if my brother hadn't been such a terrible person, but unfortunately, that's exactly what he is. He always knew he would be loved no matter what, and he took full advantage of it. Whenever I achieved something, he found a way to pull attention back to himself. One example says everything. On my 18th birthday, he suddenly announced that he was dating a college senior and planned to drop out of high school to live with her. Any parents would panic, and mine did. Friends and relatives heard everything. Of course, none of it was true, but that didn't matter. He ruined my birthday, and that's the kind of person he is. I still despise him. Once I left for college, I only came home when it was absolutely necessary. My parents didn't seem to miss me much. They had their favorite, and that was all they needed. Even our college send-offs showed the difference. For me, it was just family and a couple of friends. For him, they organized a huge celebration, invited everyone they knew, and even rented a proper restaurant. I never had any real expectations from my parents. I knew that once I became an adult, I'd be on my own. There was no chance they would willingly spend money on me. The only reason they paid for my college education was because my father was wealthy. Honestly, I was relieved they could afford it, because in their eyes, sending me to college was a waste. They believed I should simply get married after graduation and start a family. I begged them to let me study and promised I would be forever grateful. I think the chance to keep some control over me is what made them agree. That's just my theory, but I'm almost certain it's true. Either way, I graduated from business school as a top student and had no trouble finding a job.
Once I started earning money, I told my parents I would eventually pay them back, though not immediately. They were disappointed. They truly believed I would start looking for a husband the moment I graduated. My mother was openly against me working and claimed it would be safer for me to just find a man and get married. She even said that the older and wealthier I became, the fewer men would want to marry me. It sounds horrible, but that's who my parents are. I don't know why they're like this. Maybe that's how they were raised. But people can change. They just didn't want to. I told my mother that times were changing and that independence mattered more to me than marriage. They were angry for a few weeks, but when they realized it didn't affect me, things returned to an uneasy peace. By then, I had already started paying them back. With a stable job and steady income, I eventually repaid everything in full. After that, I saw no reason to keep up polite relations. It became clearer than ever that my brother was their only priority. We used to meet occasionally for lunch or family events, but once the debt was gone, I started seeing them less. Being around them was exhausting. They constantly pressured me to find a husband and get married as soon as possible, so I reduced visits even further. Another reason was that every meeting turned into endless praise of my brother. He also graduated from business school, but he was nowhere near my level. As far as I knew, he was a terrible student who spent most of his time partying. I never understood what exactly they were bragging about. What made it worse was that they never bragged about me, despite the fact that I held a much higher position and earned significantly more. My brother couldn't even find a job on his own. My father had to hire him out of obligation. He barely did anything and still got paid. There was nothing impressive about that, but I had grown used to how my parents viewed me. The only reason I stayed in touch at all was because I owed them money. Once that was settled, I focused on my career, and they didn't try to see me either. We slowly drifted apart. A couple of years later, a colleague and I started discussing ideas and decided to launch our own business. We spent a long time refining everything before I even considered approaching my parents. We had a solid business plan and all the groundwork done. When I went to them, it wasn't as their daughter, it was as a business person seeking an investment. By then, we barely spoke. Asking them for money felt uncomfortable, but my father was an excellent businessman, and his experience would have been valuable. My partner agreed that it made sense. Most importantly, they were our safest option. To my surprise, my parents were genuinely impressed with what we presented. They weren't awkward about the years of distance and clearly understood that this was purely a business proposal. I doubt they would have agreed if the idea hadn't been so strong. It had nothing to do with me being their daughter. My father simply loved making money. Unfortunately, it was only a verbal agreement. He said the paperwork would come after his lawyers completed an audit and once we had something more tangible than just plans. So for a few months, my partner and I kept our regular jobs while building the business on the side. We had a few potential investors, but my parents were willing to contribute the largest amount. To keep them interested, we worked relentlessly. After a couple of months, when about 75% of the work was done, I spoke to my father again. He told me he was impressed and ready to move forward with the documents.
My partner and I submitted our resignation letters the very next day after my father said he would invest and cut us a check soon. That check never came. A few days later, my parents called me over and told me they had reconsidered and no longer wanted to invest in my business. I still remember that conversation clearly. I remember the exact moment it felt like the world collapsed. I couldn't believe they were abandoning me like that. When I asked why the idea had suddenly become bad, even though just a week earlier they had fully supported it, I immediately knew something was wrong. I pressed them until they finally admitted the truth. They had spoken to my brother. He was the one who told them my business wasn't worth investing in and was doomed to fail. My father backed out solely based on my brother's words. I was in shock. I asked why my brother hadn't voiced his concerns earlier. My father said my brother had been thinking about it for a long time and just wanted to see what I would come up with before forming an opinion. That's when I realized my brother hadn't been thinking about the business at all. He was thinking about how devastating it would be if he sabotaged everything at the very last moment. And that's exactly what he did, like a sneaky, calculating snake.
He waited until I had done most of the work and only then convinced my father to pull out, leaving me completely screwed. He played it perfectly and put me in an unbelievably difficult position. That day, I completely lost it at my parents' house. I screamed, said a lot of awful things about them and my brother, and stormed out. Then I went home to collect myself and figure out what to do next, because my partner was counting on me, and I couldn't let him down. I told my partner everything. I was a mess. He called me down and said we could still withdraw our resignations if the company agreed to take us back, but going back was never an option for me. So I started looking for other investors. We desperately needed funding. Our ideas were big, and our personal savings weren't enough. We pitched our idea to anyone willing to listen. After a couple of weeks, we managed to secure several investors who provided the critical funding we needed to get started. The first few months were brutal. Endless work, sleepless nights, constant doubt. We kept asking ourselves if we had made the right decision and whether this would actually work. But after a few months, we broke even, and from that point on, things only got better. We never looked back. Everything we achieved came from our hard work, belief in our idea, and persistence. Despite my brother's manipulative plan, he couldn't stop me. I was meant to succeed, and there was nothing he could do about it. One upside of the whole ordeal was that I no longer had to pretend I had a normal relationship with my family. I already knew who they really were. Still, I had been willing to give them a chance and let them invest because I believed parents were the safest option. I had simply forgotten how rotten they were and how poisonous my brother truly was. They didn't deserve to be part of my business, and I'm glad they never invested. The thought of them sharing credit for my success disgusts me. They never apologized for abandoning me at the last moment, and after the day I stormed out of their house, we never spoke again. Honestly, I was relieved they didn't try to reach out. I wouldn't have known what to say anyway. But recently, they showed up again. They wanted to invest in my business. Of course, now that things are going well, everyone wants a piece of it. This happened just a few days ago. It was a Sunday. I was at home when they showed up unannounced. I've lived in the same apartment since graduating college, so finding me wasn't hard. When I opened the door and saw them, I was genuinely stunned. I couldn't imagine they had anything to say after what they'd done. Almost 3 years had passed and they hadn't contacted me once. Still, I let them in. Some naive part of me thought they might be there to apologize and make things right, maybe even try to rebuild our relationship. I was wrong. They came straight to the point. They said they had finally learned that my business was doing well and now felt ready to join as investors. They didn't ask how I was. They didn't exchange pleasantries, just business. In a strange way, I appreciated the honesty. At least they didn't waste my time pretending to reconcile. What stunned me was how confident they were that I would say yes. I could see it on their faces. They fully expected me to welcome them in. I laughed in their faces and told them it wasn't happening. They could leave. We had nothing to discuss. My father looked completely shocked. His face turned red as he struggled to respond. He said I had no right to disrespect him because he was my father and deserved respect, despite the fact that they had never shown me any. I told him I was giving exactly the amount of respect they showed me all these years. Besides, he wasn't there as my father. He was there as a potential investor. They were stunned. I could tell they wanted to argue, but I had no interest in listening. I told them again that I didn't want their money. End of discussion. My mother burst into tears and said she had always known it was a mistake to let me go to college because one day it would turn against them. She just hadn't expected it to happen so soon. I didn't even understand what she was saying anymore. I just wanted them gone. I told them to leave again, but they didn't move. My mother kept crying on my couch, saying how awful it was that I would threaten to call the police on my own parents. My patience snapped. I stood up and physically pushed them out of my apartment. I work out, I'm tall, and they weren't expecting it. They were completely stunned. It was easy to shove them out and slam the door shut. They left. I thought it was over. A few hours later, my brother called, furious.
He seriously threatened to sue me, claiming that I had physically harmed our parents and that I owed them an apology. According to him, I had no right to treat the people who raised me that way, especially since, in his words, they were the reason I became so successful. That sounded absurd to me. I was actually quite gentle, all things considered, and as far as I could tell, no one was injured. I also don't believe it's illegal to force people out of your own apartment when they refuse to leave. Still, my entire family began threatening legal action if I didn't apologize. I honestly don't understand why they're so furious, but it's exhausting. I don't know what to do anymore. Was I really wrong for physically escorting my parents out of my home? Update 1. A week passed after my parents showed up at my place and I threw them out, and after my brother suddenly decided to play the moral authority. My relatives launched a full-scale online harassment campaign against me. It was a brutal week. At first, I even considered apologizing just to make it stop, to be left alone and end the harassment. But then I talked to my business partner, read the comments people left, and realized something important. It would never end. Even if I apologized, they would find a new reason to hate me. And there was another critical point. Apologizing could make it easier for them to file a lawsuit, since it could be interpreted as an admission of guilt. So apologies were officially off the table. The only thing I could do was block all of them and hope things would eventually calm down. I simply don't have the strength to endure that level of stress anymore. I also want to clarify something, because many people asked why I kept contact with them for so long despite how badly they treated me. Honestly, I don't have a perfect answer. I think part of me just wanted to have some kind of family. As I said before, they weren't cruel 24/7. Sometimes there were good moments, and I think I stayed for those moments alone. I'm talking about my parents. I never had a real relationship with my brother, and I'm relieved that he's no longer part of my life. He's practically a devil in human form. What he did before my business launch, convincing my parents to back out after all the work was done, was pure, calculated evil. I almost have to acknowledge his skill, because few people could come up with something so cruel and destructive just to ruin someone else's life. Update 2. I decided to talk to my partner about what to do next regarding my parents and the situation overall. I was worried that the posts my relatives were making might reach our business partners, which could seriously hurt our reputation. He told me the best approach was to ignore everything and act as if nothing happened. Eventually, they'd get bored. They have their own lives, and once they realize they're not getting a reaction from me, they'll move on. I think he's right, so that's exactly what I'm doing. Many people suggested I make my own post or respond publicly. I appreciate the support, but I don't need that right now. It would only create more drama. I want to focus on work and move forward, and that's impossible if I keep getting dragged into conflicts, even ones that no longer matter emotionally. Since my brother contacted me from a new number, I blocked his old one 3 years ago, I became curious about what he's been doing all this time. I had told my friends I didn't want to hear anything about him, but curiosity got the better of me. The last I knew, he was still working at my father's company. I asked a couple of friends, and they confirmed that he's still there and hasn't progressed at all. It's honestly pathetic. They also told me the company is about to be sold. That could explain why my brother suddenly tried to contact me. He probably wanted to attach himself to something meaningful so he wouldn't feel completely useless. And of course, there's also what my mother said, wanting control over me again. That would have been much easier if they owned a stake in my business, especially a controlling one. But none of that is my problem. I was just curious. They can do whatever they want. Update 3. Almost a month has passed since my first post. I shared a couple of updates and then got completely buried in work. There wasn't much else to say. My relatives stopped their harassment campaign once they realized I wasn't going to respond. My parents and brother also stopped trying to contact me. I think it finally became clear that I wasn't going to apologize, and there was nothing to apologize for. I did exactly what any sane person would do. As for my family, well, that's where things stand. By the way, my father's company was officially sold. I found out a few days ago through a friend. They made a huge deal out of it, posted everywhere, even threw a party like it was some massive achievement. What they may not realize is that there's now a very real chance my brother could lose his job. I can't imagine him being a competent employee. The only reason he worked there was because my father was in charge.
Now anything can happen. It would be incredibly satisfying if he got fired. I know it's wrong to take pleasure in someone else's downfall, but honestly, I'd love to see his reaction. Meanwhile, he can watch my business continue to grow. I hope they're all paying attention because it's only getting bigger and more profitable. A lot of people asked whether there's anything romantic between me and my business partner. It's sweet that people hope for that, but we're just close friends. I do have a boyfriend, though. We've been together for a couple of years. I didn't mention it before because it wasn't relevant, and the family drama consumed all my attention. Yes, things are great between us, and we're even thinking about getting married in about a year. And guess who won't be getting an invitation? My parents had a chance, just once, to be decent people. As usual, they ruined it. That's where the story ends.
Flirting with 19-year-olds. I'm 31 years old and recently came out of a long-term relationship. I was emotionally wrecked and trying to get back to feeling normal. One night, a friend and I went to a nice bar-restaurant downtown, a place where people of all ages usually hang out. While we were there, a group of girls was celebrating a birthday. Staff came out singing happy birthday, and they brought a cake with candles shaped like the number 19. The birthday girl was attractive, so I decided to go over and say hello. Her friends were also pretty. My friend immediately told me it was a bad idea and said they looked way too young. At first, he didn't even want to come with me, but eventually followed along just to make sure nothing went wrong. We congratulated the birthday girl, and at first, everything seemed fine. The girls laughed, and I thought the conversation was going okay. Then, suddenly, one of them snapped and told me to take the hint and leave. I was caught off guard and apologized, but she said I was making them uncomfortable and needed to read the room. Another girl asked us to go. I was about to leave, but then someone compared me to R. Kelly. That hit a nerve. Being associated with predatory behavior made me furious. I told them that comparison was unfair and ridiculous. We were all adults. My friend tried to pull me away, but I stood my ground. The birthday girl said it was weird for someone my age to flirt with them, especially when it was obvious they were uncomfortable. She made another R. Kelly joke, asking if she reminded me of a certain singer. That pushed me over the edge. I apologized again for making them uncomfortable, but said that didn't give them the right to label me a predator. One of them said that was my problem, not theirs. I argued that adults are allowed to flirt with other adults. It's not illegal. Eventually, one of them yelled at me to leave. I walked away furious and humiliated. As I did, their entire table started singing Ignition Remix and laughing hysterically. Back at our table, I was shaking with anger. My friend told me the whole situation was my fault and that it had been obvious from the start that they were uncomfortable. I pointed out that they had been laughing, but he said it was nervous laughter, not genuine. I said I had every right to be upset about being called a creep when they were all 18 or 19. That's a serious accusation. My ex was 6 years older than me. My friend said they weren't calling me a predator, just a creepy older guy hitting on teenagers. He agreed the singing was immature, but I should have left much earlier. I felt like he should have defended me. In the end, I wondered if I was wrong for defending myself or for approaching them at all. Later, I accepted that my pride had gotten in the way. I can't undo what happened, but next time, I'll do better. Update from the birthday girl. I never had an account on this forum before, but our journalism professor showed it to us, and sometimes I browse the front page. A few weeks ago, I came across a post that was clearly about my birthday dinner. At first, I didn't care, but after reading it, I felt the need to clarify a few things. This wasn't a club. It was a restaurant that happened to serve alcohol. Families were sitting nearby. We were just eating dinner and talking. He came over and wished me a happy birthday. I said thank you, and we went back to our conversation. The problem was that he didn't leave. We awkwardly laughed and kept talking amongst ourselves. He stayed. Every time he spoke, we nodded politely and turned away. We said thanks, have a good night, multiple times. He still stood there. His friend kept trying to leave.
I was awkward and irritated, but I stayed polite. I even offered him a piece of cake to take with him and said goodbye again. He took the cake, sat down at our table, and said the night wasn't over yet. That's when my friend snapped. If she hadn't, I would have. When she called him R. Kelly, she wasn't accusing him of committing crimes. She was calling him creepy. Grown men in their 30s hitting on us feel creepy, period. We were polite the entire time. I gave him countless hints. His own friend was trying to escape, and then he had the nerve to argue with us instead of leaving. When he finally walked away, we started singing Ignition amongst ourselves and toward him. It's an old song our parents used to play. We turned a gross situation into a funny moment instead of letting it ruin my birthday. One more thing. When he asked our ages and announced his, it made everything worse. A 30-year-old man trying to flirt with 18 and 19-year-olds at a birthday dinner is uncomfortable. It always is. For those saying he wasn't ugly, that's irrelevant. If I'd met him under different circumstances, I could have introduced him to my aunt. But he was too old for us, and the situation was inappropriate. Being told you're legal is degrading. The entire interaction felt nauseating. When he asked our ages, it felt like he was checking IDs at a family restaurant. I'm done being polite to men who act entitled to our time and attention.
I joked about canceling my wedding, and my brother confessed his love to my fiancée. He left his pregnant wife and convinced our family to cut all contact with us. It feels like I accidentally destroyed my family. Let me explain. At 26, I got engaged to my beautiful fiancée, Olivia. She was 25. Olivia and I grew up in the same neighborhood. We went to the same kindergarten and were practically inseparable until high school. We started dating when I was 18 and she was 17. After that, we spent 4 years in a long-distance relationship while we were both in college. As soon as I graduated, I moved to her city to be closer to her and started my own business. After years of distance, I was exhausted from being apart, and the timing finally felt perfect. We lived together for a year while she finished nursing school, and I worked nonstop trying to grow my business. It was hard, but eventually things started going well. Olivia graduated last year and began working as a pediatric nurse. By that point, we had already been living together for over a year. That was when I finally did what I had dreamed of my entire life. I proposed to her. She said yes. We stayed engaged for almost 2 years because we wanted to save enough money to buy our own home before spending anything on a wedding. We didn't want a big celebration anyway. Everything felt perfect. This was exactly how I imagined my future when I was a kid. We both earned good money and planned to get married the following year. We even talked about having a child someday. Everything was going great. I never thought that a single joke could ruin my life, but that's exactly what happened last week during a family dinner. My parents invited Olivia and me over to celebrate their wedding anniversary. My younger sister Kate was there, as well as my older brother Jake and his wife Rachel. Jake and Rachel had been married for about 1.5 years and were expecting their first child. We were sitting at the table, enjoying dinner and wine, when my dad jokingly asked whether Olivia and I were ever actually going to get married or if we planned to stay permanently engaged. Before anyone assumes he was being rude, my dad is a classic dad joker. He has known Olivia since childhood and already considers her his daughter-in-law. He knew perfectly well that not getting married was never an option. He was just teasing us. I laughed, shrugged, and said something like, "Well, you know, weddings are a lot of work. Sometimes I wonder if it's worth it. Maybe we should just cancel everything and save ourselves the headache." It was meant as a harmless joke. I love Olivia more than anything and can't wait to marry her. I was slightly drunk and didn't think for a second that my words could hurt her. But they did. She started crying. I was horrified. I immediately apologized, told her it was just a joke, that I didn't mean it, and that I couldn't wait to marry her. Every word of that was true, but she was deeply upset and ran to the bathroom. I followed her, but she wouldn't open the door. Eventually, I had to return to the table alone. Everyone was shocked. No one finished their dinner. My mom and sister talked to Olivia,
and told me she wanted to be alone and would stay with them for the night. They said it would be best if I left and gave her some space. I apologized again and went home feeling absolutely terrible. That night, I sent Olivia a long message apologizing for my stupid joke and promising I would never say anything like that again. I was confident in our relationship and believed that even if it took time, we would get through this. I went to bed hoping to talk to her in the morning. I had no idea what was coming. I went to sleep very late and woke up late the next day. I wanted to check my phone to see if Olivia had written to me, but it was dead. I had forgotten to charge it. I panicked, wondering if I had missed calls or messages. When I turned it on,
He told her that he hoped she would think about what he said and give him an answer. He said he wanted to marry her and would never make her wait years for a ring the way I supposedly had. He promised he would leave his wife and give Olivia everything she wanted. He even suggested that they run away together and start a new life far away from all of us. As expected, Olivia was completely horrified. She told him exactly what she thought of him, called him a monster for wanting to abandon his pregnant wife, and said that he disgusted her. Then she turned around and walked back toward the house. Her only plan was to quickly say goodbye to my family and come back to me. She had no intention of telling anyone what my brother had said. But it was already too late. When she walked inside, she saw Rachel, Jake's wife. Rachel was crying in my mother's arms. The moment she saw Olivia, she completely lost control. She screamed and lunged at her, and my sister had to physically hold her back. The scene was chaotic and emotional. That was when everything became clear. When Rachel woke up that morning, Jake was gone. After searching the apartment, she found a note on the nightstand. In it, he wrote that he was sorry, but he couldn't keep living like this. He said he had to leave because this might be his only chance to be with Olivia before it was too late. He had packed clothes and taken some of his belongings. Rachel tried desperately to call and text him, only to realize that he had blocked her. In panic, she decided to go to my parents' house. When she arrived and saw Olivia there, she exploded. There was a lot of screaming and insults. Rachel called Olivia a home wrecker and said many other cruel things. My mother was deeply embarrassed and redirected her anger toward me and Olivia. My father tried to calm everyone down, but my mother told him to stay out of it. Everyone tried to reach me, but because of my dead phone, I was unreachable. Eventually, Rachel left, saying she would never forgive us and that because of us, she would now be a single mother. By the time I arrived, Jake was still nowhere to be found. No one could reach him. That's how everything happened. I was in complete shock. I could barely process any of it. I just stood there, staring at Olivia. Even now, it still doesn't feel real. Olivia tried to explain that this was the first time she had ever heard anything like this from Jake, and that she had no idea he felt this way. I know she's telling the truth. I can't believe he carried this obsession for so many years. I was furious with my brother, but even angrier with my mother and sister for trying to blame Olivia. I could understand Rachel lashing out in pain, but I couldn't understand how everyone could gang up on the one person who had done absolutely nothing wrong, especially when she was already devastated. I apologized to Olivia for everything she had to hear and for arriving so late. Then I asked her to wait for me in the car while I talked to my mother and sister. That conversation went terribly. My mother was completely irrational and insisted that all of this could have been avoided if I had chosen my words better and hadn't joked about canceling the wedding. That made no sense to me. Anyone with basic reasoning could tell it was a joke. And even if it was poorly timed, how could she not blame my brother, the person who actually destroyed his marriage? I told my mother she owed Olivia an apology. That only made her angrier. She said she would never say a single kind word to Olivia for seducing her son and breaking the family apart. I was stunned.
Then my sister said that my brother wouldn't have done something like this without a reason, and that Olivia must have given him hints that she was unhappy with me. Otherwise, why would he leave his wife? My mother claimed that Olivia and I had ruined the family and robbed her of the chance to be a grandmother because Rachel had said she would never allow anyone from our family near her or the baby. I tried to explain how illogical all of this was, but they told me to leave and never come back. So I did. Olivia and I went home together. We were both emotionally exhausted and didn't know what to do. I kept replaying everything my mother and sister had said, slowly starting to doubt my own sense of reality. I tried reaching out to them later, but my father told me that no one wanted to speak to either me or Olivia anymore. Update 1. I want to say how grateful I am for the support I received, and for those who believe I didn't do anything malicious that night at dinner. Some people asked why Olivia reacted so strongly to my joke. I didn't want to share something so personal, but I asked her if she was okay with it, and she agreed. She has forgiven me. I told her I knew I had acted like an idiot and promised I would never joke like that again. Our relationship is still strong, and I know we'll get through this together. The truth is, although we had agreed to stay engaged for a while and focus on practical goals like buying a home first, Olivia had started to feel insecure. A few months ago, she overheard coworkers gossiping about her never-ending engagement, and it hurt her more than she let on. She didn't tell me because she knew I would immediately suggest getting married right away, and financially, she knew waiting made sense. She trusted our relationship completely, but the doubts were still there beneath the surface. My father's joke about our engagement had already unsettled her, even though she tried to hide it. When I added my own joke, it was simply the breaking point. She felt humiliated and hurt, and it brought all those buried feelings back. I had no idea she had been carrying that. Honestly, I feel like a terrible partner for not noticing. We talked everything through and decided to have a small ceremony within the next 6 months so she wouldn't feel anxious anymore. For the past 2 years, we dreamed of a beautiful beach wedding after buying a home, but right now, what matters most is being married. After everything happening with my family, wedding planning feels overwhelming, but as long as she's by my side, I'll manage. As for why she stayed at my parents' house that night, my family has known Olivia nearly her entire life. She spent countless hours in that home, and my childhood bedroom almost feels like hers. She truly loved my family. If someone had told me earlier that my own mother and sister would turn against her and treat her so cruelly, I never would have believed it. This whole situation has shaken everything I believed in. My family is not speaking to me. I'm still trying to process what my brother did. He has not contacted Olivia since, and he avoids my calls as well. I don't know where he is. No one in my family wants to talk about him. And that's where things stand.
My father tried to stay neutral, but he didn't want to upset my mother. According to him, she was in hysterics at the thought that she might not see her first grandchild. He also said they had tried to contact my fiancé, but she made it clear that she didn't want to speak to any of them. I would never have guessed that my brother had feelings for Olivia. He is 4 years older than me. The three of us grew up together and played together since childhood. As I mentioned before, Olivia and I have been close almost our entire lives, even though we only started dating in my senior year of high school. My brother always had plenty of girls interested in him, serious relationships and casual flings alike. If he had wanted to, he could have asked Olivia out long before I did, but he didn't. I don't think I mentioned that Olivia and I had broken up for almost a year during a long-distance period. He knew about it and still never tried to pursue her, not even a little. So I cannot understand how he could suddenly pull something like this. I feel deeply ashamed of how he treated Rachel. Olivia and I both tried to reach out to her and explain our side, but she refused to talk. After several days of trying, we decided to respect her choice and stop bothering her. Honestly, I don't know what to do next. I still believe my fiancée deserves an apology from my family for everything she was forced to hear, and I will make sure she gets it. But for now, we both agreed it would be better to let everyone cool off before confronting them again. A few weeks later, my brother returned to his wife. When he showed up at home, he begged Rachel to give him a second chance. He claimed he hadn't been thinking clearly and blamed Olivia for everything. He even had the audacity to say that she had been giving him signals for years, and that night it all just hit him, so he made a rash decision. I cannot understand how anyone could believe such nonsense, but Rachel apparently did. She decided to forgive him. But what shocked me even more was my sister's reaction. Rachel no longer wanted to be part of our family and demanded that my brother move to another state and raise their child far from all of us. My brother tried to convince her to reconsider, and she agreed, but only on one condition. She never wanted to see me or my fiancé again. Our parents and my sister could be part of the child's life only if they completely cut me and Olivia out of the family forever. According to her, this was fair. She didn't want to be around anyone who had caused her so much pain. My brother passed this message to the family, and what truly hurt me was their response. They chose him and the unborn child over me. My mother and sister wouldn't even speak to me. My father came to my house to tell me the news. I tried to defend Olivia and myself, but he told me to leave things as they were and not make the situation worse. My disappointment is impossible to describe in words. This all happened just a couple of days after the previous events. A few more weeks have passed since then. Olivia and I are going through a very difficult period. No matter how much I try to convince her that she did nothing wrong, she still feels guilty, thinking that my family cut me off because of her. Honestly, I don't care about them anymore. What angers me most is their cowardice and how proudly they took the worst possible stance. I try to let it go, but I can't. I've even caught myself thinking about ways to make them pay, despite Olivia asking me to forget it. Maybe I'll come up with something. At the very least, my brother deserves a lesson.
Here's an interesting continuation. As I mentioned before, Olivia and I were furious at how my family had handled everything. It was clear that my brother only returned to his wife because he realized Olivia would never even consider being with him, and he had nowhere else to go. We, of course, do not blame my sister-in-law. The thought of her being a single mother is frightening enough. But we also understood that the whole situation was completely unfair to her. Amid all this family chaos, Olivia and I came up with a bold plan to expose my brother and reveal his true nature. The plan was risky, but we decided it was worth it. I had no doubt that my brother was a rotten person who would abandon a pregnant wife for his own brother's fiancée without hesitation. In theory, he could have realized his mistake and changed, but if he had truly regretted it, he would have proven it. The plan was this. Olivia would pretend to be interested in him, lure him into a trap, and show everyone who he really was. The risk was that my brother might see through the plan and lie to his wife and everyone else, claiming Olivia had provoked him. But since no one had been on our side anyway, we had nothing to lose. We were nervous, but Olivia was determined. She was supposed to visit him at work during lunch, tell him she had made a mistake, take him to a restaurant, and talk about the future. My role was to convince his wife to come to the same place and catch him in the act. I knew my brother would follow Olivia, but persuading his wife to even hear me out was more difficult. Still, it was worth trying. We took it seriously. Olivia even removed her engagement ring to make it convincing. As expected, my brother fell for it instantly. Olivia arrived, shed a few tears, and confessed her feelings. He melted immediately. She told him she had been afraid to admit her feelings, but was now ready to leave everything behind. Showing her bare finger without the ring erased his last doubts. Surprisingly, convincing his wife was easier than I thought. I think deep down she always knew the truth. We waited at the restaurant, and of course, Olivia entered with my brother. What happened next was spectacular.
His wife confronted him publicly, yelled at him, and even splashed a drink in his face. My brother looked as if he were experiencing the worst moment of his life, and probably he was. He exploded in anger and started yelling at Olivia. That's when I stepped in. I had seen enough of how he humiliated her. A firm punch to the jaw solved the problem. We left together, his wife, Olivia, and I, and drove straight to my mother's house. We told her everything. After a few seconds of disbelief, my mother broke down in tears and apologized to both of us for everything she had said before. My sister did the same. I'm happy to report that my family is whole again. Now my brother must face the consequences of his actions. We made it clear to him and his wife that he no longer has a place in our family, but she and their future child are always welcome. His wife is an amazing woman, and she deserves to be loved and appreciated. I'm confident she will find someone who truly values her. Olivia and I promised that we will always support her and my future niece or nephew, making sure she never feels alone. She is still shaken, honestly. We are all shaken, but I believe things will get better with time. And that's it. There have been no further updates. The story seems to have reached a logical conclusion.
I was born from an affair. I was born as the result of my mother's affair. My father recently told me the truth and said he would not pay for my college, even though he fully paid for my brothers and sisters' education. Everything is exactly as it sounds, and I don't know how to process it. I'm 18 years old, and I feel completely unprepared for what comes next. My older brother and sister both attended the same college. My brother graduated 2 years ago, and my sister will finish in 2 more years. My father paid for everything for both of them: tuition, housing, food, cars, spending money, anything they needed. My brother now has a stable job, his own place, and lives with his fiancée. My sister already has a well-paid part-time job, and my father still covers most of her expenses. I was also accepted into that same college, which had always been my dream. I was excited to talk to my parents about next steps and expected the same support my siblings received. I truly believed the money for my education had already been set aside, just like it was for them. Instead, my parents told me the truth. My mother had cheated years ago, and I was the result of that affair. My father said he would no longer support me financially. He told me my mother had 18 years to tell me the truth and prepare me for my future, but she never did. He said it wasn't his place to tell me because I wasn't his biological son, and he didn't want to interfere in how my mother raised me. I later learned that my grandparents had known the truth as well, yet they never told me either. My brother and sister had no idea and were just as shocked as I was. There had never been any hints that something was wrong. Maybe I was naive, but I always believed my relationship with my father was strong. We went to sports games together, went fishing, and he helped me when I struggled with math. He's an engineer, and he taught me how to drive. I never felt like he resented me. He gave me my name, explained its meaning, and was proud of it. He used to tell that story often. My mother never told me anything. Looking back, I now understand she should have had that conversation with me long ago, but she never did. I feel abandoned and completely unprepared for the future. I don't even know if I can still attend college. I never worked because I was certain my parents would support my education. I don't know what kind of job I could get or how to balance work and school. I don't understand loans, financial aid, or any of it. My mother cries and apologizes, but she doesn't know how to help. I don't even know if I'm still welcome at home. I feel ashamed leaving my room, and if I were asked to leave, I wouldn't know where to go. I have no savings, about $400 at most. I'm angry at my mother, confused about my relationship with my father, and overwhelmed by the thought that somewhere out there is a biological father who never wanted anything to do with me. Update 1. I spoke with my mother yesterday. I wanted to say more, but I lost my nerve halfway through the conversation. The important thing is that I'm not being kicked out of the house and I haven't been disowned. My father wasn't home at the time. A week earlier, my grandfather had suffered a stroke,
and my father was helping my grandmother arrange in-home care. I planned to contact the college's financial aid office and figure out my options. Update 2. My grandfather passed away yesterday morning. I'm physically okay, but everything else feels secondary right now. My sister knows everything and told me not to worry. She's fully on my side and supports me. For now, my focus is on being there for my grandmother. Update 3. Things have mostly returned to a sense of normalcy given everything that happened. I was finally able to talk openly with both my mother and my father, and I now understand where I stand with them as well as with my brother and sister. Both of my parents love me. What happened weeks ago was an emotional overreaction during an intense argument between them, worsened by stress and grief over my grandfather's illness and death. I'm going to college, exactly the one I always wanted to attend, and my experience will be the same as my siblings. The money was never truly the issue. My family is not struggling financially. My father had an emotional breakdown during an already overwhelming time. Even if my father had followed through with his decision, my grandmother later told me that my grandfather left money to be divided equally among me, my brother, and my sister, enough for my education. The entire conflict started because of terrible timing. My parents had just argued, and I walked in asking about paying for my college. During their argument, my mother referenced the past, and my father misunderstood her words as justification of the affair itself. Things escalated quickly, and emotions spiraled out of control. Since then, my parents have reconciled, though both are still grieving in their own ways. I've spoken with my brother and sister, and we're okay. I'm still processing everything, but I'm moving forward.
My sister completely lost it and rushed over immediately, yelling at our parents on the phone the entire way. My brother was calmer, but when he got home, he made his opinion very clear as well. The death of our grandfather seemed to cool everyone down and shift the focus toward dealing with grief rather than conflict. Reading through advice from others was eye-opening. I realized how unprepared I was for the real world. Many people asked how it was possible that I didn't know anything about student loans or grants. The truth is simple. When you grow up believing year after year that college is already paid for, you never feel the need to think about those things. I knew loans and financial aid existed, but I never thought they would apply to me. In less than 24 hours, my reality flipped completely from "I'm going to college and everything is set" to "you're not my biological son and I'm not paying for your education." Many people grow up knowing they'll need loans, jobs, housing, and backup plans. I didn't. For me, it was a sudden and brutal shift. Going through advice helped me build a list of practical steps: what jobs students can realistically get, how to find housing, how to open a bank account, apply for a credit card, choose a mobile plan, and manage basic independence. Even now, with things stabilizing, that knowledge still feels important. It gave me confidence that I won't be completely lost if things ever fall apart again. Some of the things people said about my parents were harsh. Reading it hurt, and I didn't even get through all of it. I don't want to imagine what else was written. My father feels deeply ashamed of how he reacted. He apologizes often. I understand that he wasn't in a good emotional state, but that doesn't erase the pain. I can understand his reaction and still be hurt by it. Despite everything, this didn't permanently damage our relationship. We'll be okay. My mother struggled more than anyone. Over time, she answered questions she had avoided for years. When she had the affair and became pregnant with me, my parents began divorce proceedings. She moved in with the man she had been seeing, but after a few months, he decided he didn't want anything to do with her. He threw her out while she was pregnant, and she had nowhere to go. My grandparents took her in because she was still the mother of their grandchildren. After years of working through things, my parents reconciled. My father chose to accept me as his own. My biological father has never been part of my life. My father barely knew who he was, and my mother never saw or heard from him again. He knew she was pregnant with his child. He just didn't care. I have no desire to know more about him.
I've thought about it for weeks, and I don't feel any pull to find him, learn his name, or discover whether I have half-siblings somewhere. Some suggested DNA tests. I could probably find him that way, but I won't. I don't want to find him, and I don't want him to find me. What matters is this: I have a mother, a father, a brother, and a sister. That is my family. I plan to get a job and become more independent, not to distance myself from my family, but to know that I can survive in the world if everything ever falls apart again. My mother admitted that I was sheltered far more than my siblings, and that my parents should have prepared me better for adulthood. Now I understand my place in my family. I am loved, and I have options. I thought I was isolated, but my world turned out to be much bigger than I realized. My grandparents, my siblings, my aunt, my cousins, all of them are on my side. My parents are ordinary people. They make mistakes. This wasn't their best moment, but I choose to see it as a moment of weakness within an otherwise loving family.